Welcome back to another Flophouse Plays tier list, and I am joined, of course, by the incredible, the incomparable, the true master of muscles, Autumn Ivy. How are you doing this fine tonight, afternoon, whenever this goes up?
Fine day, night, something. I am well. Thank you for having me, of course. I definitely thought you were going to say the incredible edible, and I, stopped, and I was like, wait. No, I'm great.
What is your history with the Silent Hill franchise? Because I definitely know there's stuff.
That's a word for it. So funny enough, Silent Hill, I mean, obviously I have one of what I would have preferred more and multiple tattoos. But I do have a tattoo from the series on my upper left shoulder. I started actually I didn't even start on the original Silent Hill because this was during the time period where I was still very much getting into and couldn't afford the things I would have liked to. Mm-hmm. So I kind of had that situation where a friend of a friend put me in a position to borrow their copy of Silent Hill 2. So I actually came in on Silent Hill 2.
Ah.
Yeah.
Because that's pretty much exactly my experience. I did not have a PS2 or an Xbox at that point. And over to my friend's house, back in the early 2000s, and he had Silent Hill 2 on the Xbox. So I saw him play that, and that's totally fine because he didn't even really need to play Silent Hill 1 for that. So when I went back and I played the first one when I got a PS2 backwards compatibility, I was like, this has nothing to do with that.
No.
Almost. So. That's the magic of this. Well, that's not the magic of the series. I always kind of wish they had just always had a completely new Silent Hill every time with a different story that connects nothing to the previous ones.
Yeah.
I always kind of felt like an anthology sort of thing would have been better because doing sequels is always hard, like actual story sequels, you know?
Well, and I think the hard part about it is when you look at the series as a whole in its timeline, right? Silent Hill was a series that was inherently built on the concept of a story. And then they kind of sat back in it and they were like, but what if the whole town was that way? What if the whole thing was like the people kind of finding their comeuppance for the things that they had done, their regrets, their literal and metaphorical inner demons, and so on and so forth. And then as the series, because you start from Silent Hill back in 99, and then you go all the way up now to the most recent, which is now the remake of Silent Hill 2. And then eventually, of course, F and I think Townfall. So looking at the original, though, they stepped up and said, all right, what if you play as this character going back and he's lost his wife and this is how we're going to roll it out? And then they did. But then you've got a bunch of side stories, and we'll, I'm sure, get into it as we start to tier these, where you find out about Alessa, and then you find out about Travis, and then it comes back to the Shepherd family, and you're like, cool, what? And then I don't know if I want to talk about 4, so, but that's what we're here for.
We're gonna have to talk about 4. And then there's others even more dismissive tones we could say. Unfortunately, it's a series that is plagued by dizzying highs, terrifying lows, and creamy middles. So, why don't we start off chronologically? I find is usually the best way to rank these.
Okay.
So we have Silent Hill 1. I'm just plopping them down there. I always remember hearing when it was new, oh, Silent Hill's this scary, you can't handle it, you'll cry, there's no, Resident Evil is nothing compared to Silent Hill in terms of scares and stuff. But I played it after Silent Hill 2, so it's never made a super big impression on me. I always try to put myself in the mindset of no, this was pretty technically better than Resident Evil on a graphical level, just because it was all 3D, et cetera, et cetera. So when you go back to it, it's kind of hard to place your headspace into it, because 2 and 3 just look so much better, and just facial animation. So I always struggle to think how I think about Silent Hill 1, but I think 6-star rank, 8-star rank is kind of where I'm kind of feeling. How about you?
I think that the introduction of Harry Mason and the beginning of Silent Hill for what it is as a whole kind of did set a precedence, especially for the late 90s, early 2000s, for what we as players in any capacity were looking for. I mean, Silent Hill is an OG psychological horror, like, original. I mean, we would not have games now here in 2024 going into 2025 revisiting the stylistic effects that Silent Hill kind of bore into us from here. And the same could be, of course, said about Resident Evil, but we are talking about Resident Evil here. So what I could say is you were confronted with the first game where we had not really seen something quite like this. Like, there was obviously, games like Parasite Eve and other things like that that had their own approach. But this was about a man who was really grieving, wound up with his adopted daughter, Cheryl, and then all hell breaks loose, literally. So then you're finding characters that you wouldn't expect to see. You're running into monsters that, were very specifically designed for this man's personal nightmares. So I'm gonna agree. I think that because this is the start, this is our flower bud, so to speak. I think that the first one definitely should be an 8-star, not because of the playability for the style, because over the camera stuff was a little rough back then, but taking personal bias out in terms of what they brought to the table, I think is solid. So I would say 8. I will agree.
Right. Okay. The other thing for me personally is that Harry is just, I guess it's just because of the PlayStation's limitations, but it's just like going back to him and his, face model and character model and just voice acting and stuff. It's just hard to get behind him a little bit compared to the huge technological leaps they would do later, and even in the reimagining we'll talk about later. So it's like I place a big emphasis on the protagonist, like in either be a Resident Evil game or this, or survival horror games in general. And it's like, man, I wish this got a very traditional remake at some point that, because Shattered Memories, we'll talk about it, is quite different. But yeah, it's just like protagonist man in Silent Hill, but at least, there's a core, like you mentioned, of trying to find his daughter and everything, and that's a little bit more approachable than like SWAT team members stuck in a haunted house.
Yeah, meanwhile you're like staring down the laneway at, Star Team, and you're like, hey guys, listen, I know you're kind of trained for this, but why do you suck so bad? Meanwhile, Harry's off in the corner like, I don't know where the fuck I am right now, man, but I'm tripping. So
I'll try my best though.
I guess
I may not have training, but
But I do think that as a core precedence, yes, and we were pretty limited back then. But see, even because we went from 99 for Silent Hill into about 01 for Silent Hill 2, and obviously we're jumping because for some reason, I guess game companies just decided to forget that the very first game ever existed. So, of course we're getting the remakes of 2. I would have loved to see 1 remade. But now, we obviously have the introduction of Silent Hill 2. Now, going back to 01 Silent Hill 2, I do think that Silent Hill 2 presented a pretty solid step up, I guess, considering what the team had decided they were looking for in the story for Silent Hill. So suddenly, it's not Harry. Right? Like, suddenly we're stepping into a different, like, the same world with a different character. So now all of a sudden we have James, and we're like, okay, who's James, and why is his wife dead? Like, wait a minute here. So, would you like to start with Silent Hill 2?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, pretty overrated, 2-star, like, it really didn't do much to it. I can't. Anyway, so it's a 10-star. I mean, it's pretty, like, come on now. Like, what are we even doing here? The only thing I'd really say is that it has to be 10-star, but for me personally, still not my favorite Silent Hill.
Yes.
It's very, very close, obviously, but it's still not my personal favorite, and I just think just comes down to I don't know why. There's just one other that I'm just like, I just vibe with this one better, but Silent Hill 2, obviously did a lot to advance this team, Team Silence, standing within Konami, so much so that Konami's like, well, then let's sequelify and franchise the fuck out of this. And that's kind of like what led to its like sort of drop off a little bit here and there, where it's like, well, the reason why this was special is because you didn't care about this team. Like when they made Silent Hill 1, they're like, you're just a bunch of like randos that we didn't really have a place for, make this, we don't really care. Versus, whoa, we care because money bucks. So, but you know, that's the way it goes. So you can't really like, you know, fault any company for wanting to make a franchise out of a franchise.
No, I mean, look at independent horror independent horror games now, right? So like, we're stepping into, just like you said, where this small team of creators and devs and concept artists and so on got together and were like, okay, well, we have just a little bit of funding, so let's do it. And then they did, but then they created something that had care to the point of, let's create this horrifying story centered around this man. That Konami came back and was like, okay, but like, what if we give you a little more? Like, what can you do with a little
more money?
And they did, and that's what I think is so important about maintaining that. And with Silent Hill 2, for me personally, because Silent Hill 2 was my first Silent Hill, due to obviously circumstances discussed, I liked because I've always been a psychology person. I've always liked abnormal psychology. I wanted to be a profiler when I was a kid. So like that, I know, cool. big dreams, right? I'm not a veterinarian. Nope. So I wanted to study serial killers. But with James's backstory, because I am a huge and heavy like story-based person. If the narrative for a game does not capture me in the way that I need it to, I will get bored and I will finish it, but I'm going to hate it. And it's going to be like pulling teeth with me. The story of James stepping in for Silent Hill 2 was fascinating from the beginning of it, because once again, we are in this world where you're stepping up to these characters that are just really unusual. And there's something almost, I don't want to say visually uncanny valley, but like they themselves, the way they speak, the things that they're doing, like it just seems a little weird. But like all of the stuff with James and Maria happened. And then I liked the fact from the narrative perspective that you start to pick up pieces of James's past and realize what has happened throughout the storyline of Silent Hill 2. All the way, of course, to everything that happened actually happened with his wife. Spoiler alert, everybody. There may have been a murder, in case you didn't know. But I loved that they utilized Pyramid Head and the things that Pyramid Head did as, I don't even want to use the word villain, because he really isn't. Yeah, that's... He's just a force. Yeah, well, he's an antagonist because he has to be, but he's an antagonist because James made him that way. And I can go into that spin all day long, but for me, because of the moves they made, because of a lot of the playability, and because this storyline was very, it captured a lot, and I think it was a really good step forward for the series. I will agree with you on the 10. Not because we know the remake's coming, but because legitimately it does hold a special place for me. Yeah.
And even aside from like the huge technical like upgrades, like with lighting and character models and stuff, I just think at the end of the day, like it's more of a mystery, especially at the start. Like, okay, you got this letter and now you're in Silent Hill versus Silent Hill 1, where it's like you lost your daughter. I lost my property, my item. I gotta find it. Like it's
my adopted property. Damn.
It's more of a video game thing, and not like a mystery narrative thing as much as Silent Hill 2 presents itself like at the very, very start. You're like, okay, cool. And you know, it's a lot more mysterious, which is again more intriguing.
Well, and I think when you are running into, I mean, to cut into myself, I'm going to interject for us both and talk a little bit about the horror, because I'm second guessing myself now about the first game. Only because we're coming up on something that I did not consider when we started the conversation. And I think we're going to do this a couple of times, but it's okay. I only say that I think 1 belongs in the 6-star, and I'll explain once we get to 3. But
Okay.
There was here's why. There was a hole here, it's gone now, right? So we know that there was pieces of really terrifying moments that happened in each of these games, and I guarantee you can probably pull at least one moment from each game, if not a character style. Like, you know, whether it was a person. Like, I love Sybil, right? Sybil was...
Right.
Well, first of all, I could get into the movie, I won't, but Sybil, I salute you. But for James's part, you walk into where that all of like the newspaper articles and all that other stuff is littered, and literally what appears to be blood is there was a hole here, it's gone now. A lot of the stuff for horror began to build up from 2 forward, where everything was a metaphor, but it was an intentionally placed metaphor, which included the weird shit that's written on the walls sometimes, or like things that you'll hear like gurgling in the background, or certain changes in the environment. And that really didn't start to happen until after and during 2.
Okay. Yeah. So I mean, then let's just throw it on the board now. I mean, Silent Hill 3 is my favorite.
Yes.
Heather is so fucking goated that it's crazy. I love, Heather is a perfect protagonist to me. I get by her 100%. I was so devastated when I saw Silent Hill Revelations, and, you know, God bless the actress for trying, but no one can do it. It's an impossible task, especially, I'm sure, under whatever duress that movie was made under. But, yeah, no, I love everything about Silent Hill 3, honestly. There's not a weak bit to it. Story, just even more visually advanced in Silent Hill 2 in terms of like character model animation. Memes are just as good. They're
the
totally,
memes are so good from 3.
Just Robbie the Rabbit, like the iconography there. It's kind of the perfect Silent. And then like Silent Hill 2 is like has all that too. It absolutely has all that too. But I just prefer 3.
Well,
so, and another easy 10-star for me.
What I love, and I'm gonna tell you, I'm putting it at 10 anyway. Like just because I 3 was period end of story a favorite. Like it will always be a favorite. For a lot of reasons. So obviously for me, if it wasn't too obvious, I have the halo of the sun on my left shoulder. So 3 is my, is my beef. I liked 3 a lot because they brought in an element of a couple of different scenes and elements of horror that I personally, and perhaps I'm wrong, I mean there are other, I wasn't as deep in independent horror or horror in general terms for games back then because I couldn't afford to be. I was dirt poor.
Right.
But for my experience of the games that I did get to play, there was a lot of really jarring horror scenes in 3 that came up, like the happy birthday, and then you have the bathroom mirror that you walk into.
Yes,
that,
I was just about to say. Yeah,
you can't fucking do anything, and you're like, what do I? And you're sitting there panicking because you're like, what do I do? What do I do? I can't do it. What do I? And then you're just making animal grunts because you don't know what to do.
Pretty much, yeah.
And I thought that from a horror perspective, it really did a good job on drawing some of that, like, we hadn't seen this before, let's implement something different. The other cool thing is that, again, some of the scares in Silent Hill as a general series were representative of the characters and what the characters themselves were going through. So, for example, we have, like, different pyramid heads with James, right? So Pyramid Head in 2 is not necessarily the same Pyramid Head that you're getting in a few of the other games. And I think people forget that. There are multiple Pyramid Heads, realistically, which includes Red Pyramid and the Butcher, and we'll get into all that later. But for 3, for me, you've got, like you said, you've got Robbie, which was a really creepy, cool introduction. You've got the furthering of the story of Harry Mason, finally, whom just, like, rain checked out in 2, and then all of a sudden in 2003, they were like, JK, so about Harry. And you're like, what? The introduction of a regular safe place at the beginning of the game was fascinating. Because you aren't used to seeing it. You're supposed to just... or you're used to loading up and just being in Silent Hill or on your way into Silent Hill. now all of a sudden here's Heather, who like looks around and is in a mall, really, and then she just gets yeeted. Goodbye.
Yeah.
So, but no, there were a lot of things that I liked about 3, and I think that Silent Hill 3 was also a point where Team Silent had really found a solid pacing for themselves.
Yeah, definitely.
And kind of knew where they were wanting to go and what they were wanting to do to start to integrate things in. So I was here for it.
It's also the Silent Hill game that makes me the hungriest, because all I can think of is beef jerky and bread. I just can't not think about those two together. So
God, Claudia was such a bitch, though. Okay, so I'm gonna complain a little, just a little, like this much, because a little bit complain, but not like in a bad way. It's just more for like storytelling purposes. Because 3 is when you really got like waylaid by character introductions, that like Leonard. And then Claudia, and like all of the discussions around that, and the fact that like Heather literally like confronts Claudia and then throws up a deity, and everybody's like, "Whoa, hey, wait a minute, not in my church." So
slow down.
I don't know. I loved it. I thought that it was a really good step. I thought that some of the concepts were insane. I didn't know this, but I did look this up. Apparently, originally it was supposed to be a rail shooter. And it was not supposed to be a direct sequel.
I did hear something like that a while ago, and then that went out of my brain again. But yeah, you mentioning that, like, yeah, that was totally a thing. And there's like a couple, I think there's one or at least 1 or 2 other games that kind of had like a weird start where it's supposed to kind of be this, kind of be that. And like Silent Hill 4 is one of those, because I think it was like up until a little while ago, it was like, oh, Silent Hill 4 was another game. And then they got turned into Silent Hill 4. And then I think someone from Konami or someone that was on Team Silent said, no, that's not actually true. It was another team split off to just make another Silent Hill, and they made something a bit different. So we can go on and on about
for 4.
We can go on and on about 2 and 3, but 4 is. Four is an interesting one because it is not like a 0, it is not a 10,
no.
It's somewhere in the middle. So
I'm gonna tell you it's a 4.
Yeah, please,
personally,
no, go ahead.
It's a 4, and it's barely a 4.
I like it.
It's barely a 4 for me. I'm gonna let
Why
you
is it
start.
Barely a 4?
Oh, you want me to start?
No. I just had one like basic thing to say about it. Is just like, to me, it's like a tragedy because it's one of the Silent Hill games that has the most potential to have been like.
Yes.
Right. Ugh. So yeah, no, that's it. But you go off.
No. So here's my bitch. Okay. Because, like, you have all of the bullshit about Room 302, and, like, some of that was even dragged in as, like, a reference in Silent Hill 3, and, like, you have pieces of these things that have been littered together, and, like, Silent Hill and Team Silent basically, like, handpicked things from this huge world and went, haha, what if we just littered stuff, though, but, like, didn't tell anybody? Bitches. And then they threw it in. But, like, okay, so I loved the idea, and this is why I'm so beefed and why I can't give it a 6, but I really want to, but I refuse to. Because,
same.
Because Henry in the introduction of the apartment was so fucking cool. And, like, you get into it, and you kind of start to pick apart, like, oh, who's this guy? Like, what's going on in the plot? Like, this is really strange. But you find out that he's just this regular-ass dude who kind of just is doing his own thing. And then suddenly there's a goddamn hole in his bathroom. But if you're looking at, and I don't know, maybe I was the only person who did this. I don't know if you did this. But when you're going through the apartment and you're looking at stuff in his apartment, there's a weird concept of the fact that they played on how he was he was very introverted. He didn't really, like, he obviously didn't go outside. But he still wanted to see the world. So, like, if you go to the window, things outside of the window change. If you go and look at the peephole, different things are changing in the room next door. And, like, which in and of itself is its own creepy concept, which also speaks on who he is as a character.
Right, yeah.
But I think the concept of what it could have been, the idea of like the changes in the apartment each time you come back, the idea that it kind of technically takes place in Silent Hill, but technically doesn't either, and the fact that like the room is literally killing him because he's in it constantly. It's just fascinating.
It's fascinating, but it's also bullshit. It's just like, Silent Hill, just leave me alone. You can't. I'm in this apartment. I should be fine. Well, yeah, I get it. If I was driving in my car and I wind up in your turf, I get it. That's your turf. So, but it's still such an intriguing concept. Yeah, that's all I was gonna say.
It was, and I'm like, maybe that's where you and I are on level for that. I loved it, and like from a conceptual story point, him having to go back and forth, and this idea that he has literally isolated himself, and then like you have this really sweet neighbor and like these other things going on, but like this man refuses to do anything but like it internalized shit around him, right? That did not save this game. The cool room changes, the concepts of character plot, the idea, it was not enough to save this game, because the only thing that I bitch about the most about this is the fact that you play the same game backwards that you play forwards. Once you get to that end point with like, you go through the tower, or like the water tower or whatever, and you have that bullshit ass puzzle that they've got at the end, and then it's basically a run and gun. This whole game was intended for nothing but it wasn't complex puzzles. It wasn't like your attention is drawn in and like you get stuck, like the bathroom mirror scene. Like there wasn't jarring horror points except in the apartment. That was the only place that you ever got to experience the weird shit. Otherwise, you were like straight melee fighting your way through the game and then through the game backwards. And I'm like, are you fucking serious?
And it's not good. It's the weakest of like the PS2 ones in just terms of gameplay, of like hitting enemies and like a lower tier of enemy designs too.
Yeah.
Are they terrible? No, but they're like a step back from what they're not good. No. And then just escort, like the worst escort section in video gaming, or it's close around there, where it's like this character just does not behave the way that they should.
Nope.
Why are they doing this? Why is this happening to me? And then you basically ask, why are you playing this if you're suffering through it? I do recognize that some people have kind of like, no, leave 4 alone. I can understand that almost. If you like were just coming into your own, and then Silent Hill 4 is the one you played, I can understand someone being like, no, I like this, like that. Yeah, no, sure. I mean, but then again, I would have liked this a lot better if Tommy Wiseau was in it and this comes out.
Oh my God,
Silent Hill has betrayed me.
Hi, Mark.
I Oh, hi, Henry.
Oh, yeah. Well, so, all right. So here's the thing. The other aspect that has to do with the beef is that you encounter the same characters in terms of like your villains, your antagonists, your creatures, right? You experience the same creatures every time, damn near every level, and then experience the same shit backwards. And then on top of that, the whole beef about like, technically I lean for like because you were talking about the escort stuff, right? Yeah. So this was game 4. And if I'm not mistaken, and I'm gonna look this up, the escort mission for like Resident Evil 4, right? So Resident Evil 4 came out in 2005. The whole game is basically an escort mission.
Yeah.
Silent Hill 4. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say like there's like the middle chunk is like an entire escort mission. I think, you know, Ash is not with you at the start and she's not with you at the very end, and that's kind of it. So, but yeah, no, go ahead.
So you've got, I guess, let me rephrase. In comparison to Eileen versus that, right? So like that was its own special, really long chunk where you're dealing with, I'm not gonna call it a mansion, but like whatever you would call Salazar's palace, but like
castle, whatever. Yeah.
Anyway, so that came out in 2005, right? Shortly after. 2004 was Silent Hill 4. We were still kind of working through the concept of like this style of escort mission in horror, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And they were like really feeling it out because there was still a lot of new technology. There was still a lot of new programming concepts. Like there was a lot to it. But then here comes fucking Eileen, who can't die while she's with Henry, but then she also might like sometimes get possessed, but then only if certain circumstances are met. But then if she gets beat the fuck up through the game, she might die during the final boss fight, which actually directly affects your ending. Like it's such crap. And then it doesn't there's moments where it feels like it doesn't matter what you do in this game. So 4, I can't. Good luck, goodbye, good night.
Well, 4-star rank for 4. Yeah, it's poetry, right? I think if they had been like, because this came out a year after, or even like just a couple of months, maybe, I'm not sure, like the time frame between 4 and 3, but I'm pretty sure 3 was 2003, and I think if given more time, maybe another senior director, producer, whatever, might have stepped in. It's like this could have been a 6 because the concept is strong enough of to be like improved upon, and especially the actual combat sections and character design and all that. So yeah, it is a tragedy because it's like the last Japanese made Silent Hill up until the Silent Hill F, I guess, right? So
yeah.
Oh well, no, there's the arcade game and I think maybe the mobile game. Who cares? Whatever.
Which and even those are separated though, because we can get back to the arcade game as a rail shooter, and I'll speak on that in a minute. But specifically for 4, the last thing I will say is that if you treat it like an independent of its own, which it is its own independent storyline. If you treat it independently, is the game the most atrocious shit I've ever seen in my life? No. It's still a good game. It still has a good solid for
but
what
compared,
you faced,
like when you're up here, when you have these two, it's
just rough. That's all. And so like as someone who stepped into 4, having been a fan of the series, it was just rough, and that's where I'm at with it. But still play it. It's still good in its own right. Just don't go in expecting miracles.
Still great graphics on the PS2, great, music still, all of that. It's time to come home to Homecoming. I do not like this game for for a variety of reasons.
Right.
I was in a game testing lab at the time, and I had gotten let go with a bunch of other people because the project had finished.
Right.
And just as I was leaving, I saw like we were getting a Silent Hill game, and then it was simply called Silent Hill 5. Like that was in like an internal email, whatever. And I was like, and I'm like getting pushed out the door.
Yeah.
I'm getting shoved out the door with like 10 other people. I'm like, no, I want to see. So, and then when it was revealed later, this is being made by an American team, Double Helix. And I remember how the story goes is that Konami were like, just pitch us a Silent Hill, anybody. We don't have, all our Japanese developers that worked on this, or most of them at least left, so pitch us this. And then Climax got this job because, hey, look how good our technology is when you go from the real world to the rusted world.
Yeah.
And then they said, okay, cool. You look okay, get in. And then just based on that, where it's like, I don't think at that time that company had the right people to make a whole game. They certainly had people to make the technology, but
not the
when you
whole
play
thing.
this, I despise Alex Shepard. I think he's just the most generic protagonist that you can be. I hate the added emphasis on combat and combos. If it was called something else, if it was called Quiet Mountain, fine. But it's a Silent Hill game, and it's following up the Japanese ones. It had a lot going against it, and I just don't find the game that fun to play. Like, it plays okay, but there's just no that big sense of mystery. It's just a different type of game. Like there's just something off about it, where it just feels like a million other horror games you might have played that were coming out around the time. And it's Silent Hill. You have to do something more intriguing than that. So just a bunch more combos and combat options is not the place where you try to improve. You can improve it a little bit, maybe, but And it's really buggy as hell. I hate it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to contest that. But this is also during the time period, I feel like, because this was 2008. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like this was the time period where, with all due respect, we were also getting, let's pump shit out as fast as we can to make people happy. So games were being put out, and this includes Call of Duty. I'm looking at y'all motherfuckers out there. There were a lot of games around 08, 09 that were coming out that were still, like, they shouldn't have been released that quick, but because there were demands, instead of backseating like they do now, where they're like, no, we're gonna push it back another month because we want this to be solid, they were like, fuck it, we'll bug it later, it's fine. And then they would release stuff. And with Homecoming, I feel like they almost wanted to, and please forgive me for saying it this way, but it's not wrong. Basically, I'm sorry, I'm trying to be like polite with the way I'm putting this, but I also am, fuck it. Listen, they went, but America though, we're gonna put American in it, and then we're gonna have that American fight. And they did, because Alex, as a Special Forces soldier, right? So man comes home, basically goes, oh, well, this is fucked. And hey, mom, and then mom's like, buzz noises in the background, like nothing's going on, right? So my beef is that Silent Hill Homecoming had, again, much like 4, it had concept, it had potential. I liked some of the ways that they tried to play with the psychological aspect of what was going on with Alex. Alex was a pretty big stereotype character. I'm not going to deny that. I will 100% agree with you, because he was an American stereotype for that point, built by an American company, right? I was thinking about walking up on the house for Alex that he remembers, like the one with the porch. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. No.
Because you pick up drawings and other things to advance for the plot, because the whole thing is like a search and rescue style thing where they still implemented combat as like its primary point, like they did in 4. Because like it was a major element. But for him, my question to you, and I would actually have you consider this, take into account that each of the Silent Hill games, as who they are and who their main protagonist is, was somehow affected by or changed with the way that the story was presented. So for example, Heather was a younger girl who was just hanging out at the mall and winds up getting, yeeted back into Silent Hill because of Harry. So then it became a family affair. The things that Heather deals with, like the happy birthday, or like staring into this mirror at herself and then watching everything in the mirror fall apart, which directly begins to affect her in real time. So Silent Hill has always been and will always have aspects of that psychological play. In Alex's case, Alex, again, was a Special Forces soldier who came home from duty to find all of this stuff messed up. So we already have established that this kind of a character would obviously come back with some stylistic PTSD, some things going on. Like, that's the way that they would have made it stylized for the narrative, right? So my question is, did combat come into play for this game a lot more heavier in the way that they chose to do it? Because of the fact that, from a psychology standpoint, that's what Alex experienced. So then suddenly you have pistols, you have rifles, you have shotguns. Suddenly it feels like a Resident Evil game, which is real confusing. But the reality is that because of who Alex was, this is what he would have had to face in his lifetime. So I would almost wonder if that was the reason for the playability. Go ahead.
What you pose is super intriguing, because you have to ask the developers, were you thinking about that? Or was it like, we need to have more action? Because that actually does make a difference. And yeah, an American soldier would have better fighting skills, but it was still their choice to choose that type of hero for their game. Either way, like, let's say they did say, oh yeah, no, we decided it would be interesting to take, a soldier would have this sort of these special set of skills, and he would have PTSD. But I don't, unless someone tells me that, I'd be more convinced that like we just need to try to make this a little bit more Resident Evil, because that's like,
That's
you know,
what the
destroying
sell is.
every
Yeah.
in sales. But
Yeah.
I can't say that for 100% certainty. So I totally get those underpinnings. I just kind of like when I said I don't particularly care for Alex, is just in game. It's a combination of his character model, the voice acting, and the voice actor, I believe, also played BJ Blazkowicz in the newer Wolfenstein games. And he's a great voice actor. Like in those Wolfenstein games, he kills it. And in this one, the last time I played it, I popped in my 360 last Halloween just to see, and there's just something about the way that character comes together in game cutscenes where I'm just like, I just don't like this guy that much. But everything you said here is still like valid and in line with, you know, what you can expect and theorize about the Silent Hill franchise. So me personally, there's just something off about this game, the way it looks on the 360. You know, you're used to like the three incredible looking PS2 games, and incredible for the PS1 looking game as well. And you go to a game that honestly looks a lot like a lot of 360 and PS3 games. I'm not sure if this was built on Unreal Engine 3 or it was their own proprietary engine. It might have actually been the latter.
I think Homecoming was prior to, because it was still 08 technically, which means development would have been happening in 06, 07.
Okay, yeah, I think it's a bit too early for that.
And I only say that because looking at our timeline, for example, we had, just to shoe these in really quick, because we're going to go over them in 2 seconds anyway, but looking at the jump from Silent Hill Silent Hill for the Room in 04, having a lull period in 05, having them revisit, so you've got Collection, Mobile Game, Arcade, Orphan, Origins, The Escape, Orphan 2, and then Homecoming, which happened in 08. So suddenly we have 4 years where you know that these were all pending plays in development and other things, where they basically kind of came back and were like, all right, well, what do we do for, you know, furthering this, because we need something to appeal to the American audience.
Gotcha.
In my defense for the psychology aspect, no, that's 100% my assumption of me talking out of my ass and just really hoping for the best. Like, that's all that is.
But you're convincing, though. That's the problem. You're convincing in the way you go about it.
Now watch, I'm going to say that shit and Konami's going to come back and be like, oh no, that's take notes.
Yeah. But I've heard people like kind of also defend this game at the same time. So I know it's like, you know, it's not like everyone hates it or whatever. There's things to like about it. I think some of the monster design is good and some of the monster design is not so good. It's 50-50. Definitely a mix. It's 50-50 for sure.
Well, you have classic monsters in this too, right? So like you do run into some of the classics, which I love. I love the fact that they still were willing to bring that back. You know, obviously you can't go anywhere without a nurse. So like on one hand,
nurses, I feel like anybody likes a nurse to be in their dreams and like show up in Silent Hill for them. If I went to Silent Hill, I'd be a nurse. I'm like, yes, okay, that we're good.
So,
you know, anything else maybe not, but
I admit though, because and I only say this because I just remembered the screenshot from it and I had to make sure I was right. But the room that you're in where you have to approach the table and they're all standing around the table, it sucks because you know what you've got to do. And meanwhile, you're just actively trying to avoid these nurses, not unlike what they had to do in the first film. But then you have characters like Amnion, who was the weird like army, daddy long legs looking pregnant woman thing. Oh my god, what? I just want to know, when you were designing this character, why and what and how, because I have never in my life seen something quite like that, and nor had we, except in Silent Hill. It was just gross.
I unfortunately know a few people that used to work at Double Helix, but all of them were too new and didn't work on this. Like they all joined after Homecoming had released. So I would still like to track down a person, get some answers to some of these questions.
Yeah.
Because they're all interesting. I do think that, is this game terrible? Can it, like Silent Hill 4, I think there's, good technology to build on.
Yeah.
I think they were kind of close, but it still missed the mark. But I this is a thing that I can 4-star, but I could see a 6-star as like, how do you feel?
I think taking a personal bias aside, because I'm having issues for myself because I know what came in between Homecoming and 4. And I have a personal bias towards one particular game that we're going to cover in just a moment. But Homecoming, I think from a puzzle perspective and from them trying to add a little bit more combat, but still bring in, the ushering of like what it was at its core, I don't think it was bad. I do think there were some jarring moments, but there wasn't really anything terribly memorable.
Yeah, that's, yeah.
So I want to say, fuck. I want to say 4, only because of the fact that I really don't have a moment that made me remember this quite like I did with, like the hole in the bathroom, or like looking out at like in Silent Hill 4, you look out at one point and if you dial certain phone numbers or do certain things, like the room itself changes, which almost would make me want to put that at a 6. Almost, except I had to play it front to back, but...
So does this sound like a good summary? It's like, this has intriguing psychological elements, this has less so, but this is just a bit more pleasant to actually play in terms of attacking monsters and just doing level stuff, but this is lower than that. Like, it's more frustrating to play, so they kind of balance out, yeah?
Yeah, I'm here for that. I think that's agreeable.
Okay,
yeah, okay. I'm good with that.
Okay, so you said you have definitely something to say, and I assume you mean Silent Hill Origins on the one that came before. Yeah. I thought in my head this was a Vita game for a second. I was like, no, PSP, I forgot.
You're all sitting there like...
it did actually come out before Homecoming, but we're going roughly chronological.
But it's okay.
Yeah. What is your feelings on the Origins?
So Origins was... different, right? And this was a Climax Action developed game. So we still got Akira under composition, so we had great music, we had everything flowing just like we were used to. Mind you that 4 had come out in 04, we had lull in 05, and then we got to see the collection come out before eventually in 07 Origins was brought out. As a character and the direction that they wanted to do Origins, I liked Travis. I liked Travis because here was this very, like, almost seemed to have been caught in the middle of shit and, like, was just trying to do a good thing, or so he thought. And so his introduction was really interesting because we hadn't really seen something quite like Travis's introduction just yet.
Right.
And so I liked it because it almost made you stop and go, okay, well, I'm used to this version of Silent Hill. I'm used to these characters being, like, sucker punched into whatever personal hell they've got to deal with.
Yeah.
What happened with him? Like, why is this so special? And then with Silent Hill Origins, we get the true introduction of, like, the Butcher, which, whether, I don't think a lot of people recognize, but, like, the Butcher was really OG, Pyramid Head, considering the timeline, because Origins literally is supposed to be like the beginning. Like, this is Travis, you are introduced to Travis swerving his big ass truck, which I'm gonna scream, and I'll get to this in a second, but Travis swerves his fucking truck to avoid hitting Alessa, and he's like, oh shit, what is this girl doing, right? Everybody's like tripping. Travis goes after her, and then suddenly Travis is faced with all of these, like, really fucked up repressed memories and things where he's like, oh. And then it's just downhill from there for Travis. And so you start to realize that Travis has had a tie to this, which makes him so close to Alessa in a way that none of these other characters have been prior to. And so, like, the introduction of the discussion about, like, who, you know, what happened with Alessa, the fact that she went through this really horrific, you know, basically being burned to the point because of a ritual and all this other stuff. And, like, with her, the spell with Dahlia. Anyway, I could go into it this entire time. I specifically really liked Origin because of the fact that they took the narrative, which, again, is my bread and butter, and went, here's this new thing. What do you think Travis is going to do? And so as you play through the game, you're starting to find, like, dialogue reveals. You're starting to find little plants from prior games. You're starting to realize that he, like, was trying to do a good guy Gary type thing and only wound up in Silent Hill again because he needed to basically help. Like, he is a personal attack dog.
Right.
And then suddenly, because as you're playing, there's a bad ending version of this game specifically where he, like, I mean, he's seizing almost, but he starts to, like, have these visions of himself as the Butcher. And the reason I say that is because the Butcher, Travis basically replaces as Alessa's personal attack dog to become Pyramid Head. There's a lot of, like, really weird underlying story specifics as you play the game if you're paying attention. Like, he is a protector of her. She drew on him in the first place when they first ran into each other because he went to go help her. That's all Travis wanted to do. Travis got fucked. Period. End of story. From a gameplay perspective, it was still kind of messy. Like, it wasn't the greatest. It was really, like, they had high vision for it. They really wanted to push it with the camera angles and the way that they were choosing to go with combat. The fact that you had, like, all kinds of, like, combat and weapon options, and maybe this is where it delved into Homecoming a little bit, where combat was a little more pushy. It just, it sucks because, again, we're met with a game that, had they taken their time in terms of the execution of the actual development itself and the way that it was played, would have been 30 times better. But the story grabs me, and again, perhaps it's personal, but the story gets me in a way where I liked Travis enough to be like, damn, dude, I'm so sorry. Because then he gets in his truck and he drives off, and, like, that's one of the endings. And you're like, oh, okay, good for Travis.
Wow, you escaped. Awesome.
Or so you fucking think. And I'm going to get to that later. So pin mark that comment because we're coming back to that shit later because it enrages me. For me, I'm going to put Origins as a personal thing for me solely. And this is hard for me to do because it is a personal favorite game. But I recognize what it is for the playability versus what they could have done because it could have been cleaner. I really want to give it an 8. I really, really, really do. But I'm going to hear you out before I do, because otherwise it's got to be a 6.
I was feeling 6, and it's not even so much the developer's fault. I think just being designed for the PSP, like, kind of handicaps it a little bit in terms of the camera angles and just the nub and stuff. There was, of course, the PS2 version.
Which I played,
Oh, that's the one you played, like, originally? Did you ever play the PSP version?
I did try once, and then I put it down because I got mad.
Okay, fair enough. So I guess so, because just as I was saying it, I was like, oh, there was the PS2 version, which I didn't play. So, but yeah, like, I like Travis a lot too. I like, just, like you said, good guy Gary just showing up in Silent Hill, just going, what's all this then? And then just, falling down the rabbit hole. So, and I like Climax as a developer. I like Sam Barlow as a writer, does incredible work in the indie scene nowadays, especially. Climax did an incredible Ghost Rider game that plays like Devil May Cry. Like, I love them, so I'm always kind of rooting for them. But yeah, like, it is definitely not like the most memorable Silent Hill, but it's also not egregious in any way to me. The PSP version, but again, kind of supplemented by the PS2 version existing. I definitely like it more than Homecoming. I like Travis. I like the PS2-ness of it, like in terms of its graphics. It just feels very, of the time. So for those reasons, like, I'm fine with a 6. I would be fine with putting it up to an 8, but I would need to replay it again and
I feel
everything to to feel super comfortable with that. But if you wanted to use, say, a power of veto, you could put it at 8 if you like.
I will consider the power of veto for this because there's one I'm saving it for before we get to it. But Origins, again, is just personal, especially with the addition of a character like the Butcher, who, you know, again, was introduced as a monster that was slaughtering other monsters. And you have to question if it was from a psychological perspective, because Travis wanted to see himself as a hero. And again, we boil back to, is that what Konami intended, or did it happen to be a player selection of, you know, I want to make this game seem smarter than it is? So I think that's where I'm a little stuck. So I will hesitantly agree to a 6, only because I want to see where the rest of these go.
Gotcha. So I am very excited to talk about Silent Hill, the arcade, because there is something there's a way to mishandle this sort of thing where it's like, take this game, this franchise, these ideas, and let's put it into something it absolutely has no business being in. Therefore, a light gun shooter. I love all the Resident Evil light gun shooter variants, the good and the bad ones. I just think it's so goofy and charming to try to attempt this. And Silent Hill Arcade, with its group of teens led by Eric, they're just like, whoa, let's go to Silent Hill, let's do a road.
Hey guys.
And then this crazy story about a ferry going down into Luca Lake, and that somehow makes them have to fight through Silent Hill and some of the worst enemies you've ever seen in the franchise, just like bats with a spike coming out of them, and just really insane stuff. The worst voice acting in the franchise by far, because it's just House of the Dead.
Basically.
And that's amazing voice acting.
What's that all about? What is happening? I can't stand it anymore. But Jesse!
Tina!
Jesse! I'm alive? I'm so glad!
We could only hope to voice act as good as these people do. Wait, get away from me, guy, monster, whatever.
How dare you!
And Pyramid Head even shows up, and you're just blasting him with infinite ammo. There's something so inherently silly, like silliness really helps me. I want to put this in a 6-star. And while I've watched videos of this game, I did play this at Galloping Ghost Arcade in Chicago once.
Okay.
They're like, you're so lucky, it's almost always broken down.
Ooh.
But this is they have like this ragged tarp that's behind you, because you're meant to be like encased in darkness as you play. It's so goofy. One thing I'll say against it is that this came out in 2007, and it looks like it's from 2001.
Yeah, it's
and
bad.
like worse than Silent Hill 2.
Well,
like way worse.
And I will admit, I did not have the pleasure of being able to physically play the game. I lived and breathed in arcades when I was younger, due to circumstances. Well, due to circumstances that I could not control. But you know, it was good and it was bad. But it allowed me to kind of have an opportunity to play, you know, like House of the Dead or like Carnival and like shit like that, right?
Yeah,
so
Carnival.
Yeah, so like I did get to experience some of that. So I did research for the arcade version, because I didn't actually know a whole lot about it. So I dug in a bit about the storyline and some of the concepts, and like I looked at like the way that it's played. Just like you said, it is the rail shooter that they initially wanted the other game to be, is what they did. And no, I'm dead serious.
What Silent Hill was destined to be.
So, but then what I found was weird is like the arcade game gives you this, it's a DTM. And what a DTM is for both horror movies and for games for me, a DTM is a dead teenager movie, which is basically your typical like, oh, here's a group of college kids going out to have fun and they're gonna die. And then they do. And you want to know why. In this case, the game and the concept of this character, Hannah, who is actually your antagonist for the arcade version, has to go back to like early 1900s, where her mother basically like goes, yeah, you know about that, because the girl is sick, and her mom picks her up and basically yeets her off this boat. Like that's it. That's the story. So then this group of friends who are coming in, because again, of course, they're members of the occult, university occult club. They come in to
Ghost Facers.
Right. It's like they're coming in to investigate. Meanwhile, Zach Baggins is somewhere in the background. So it's like, what do you do with this? I think that there is realistically, two characters in particular that they wanted to really push, and that was the marionette monster, Mama, who actually, like, if you don't like marionettes, if you don't like puppets, if you don't like mannequins, like, horrifying.
Right.
Do not pass go. I'm good. I don't want to discuss it. Fucking weird. The split worm was just Tremors all over again.
I'm always down for graboids, but it is just Tremors. You're right.
Yeah, it's like if the Mr. Grey worms from Dreamcatcher had a baby with Tremors.
Yeah.
Like, that's all it was. And then the Phantom, which is what Hannah inherently becomes at the end, where it's like this elongated arm busting out of a mouth, which is gross. With that said, the research I did, because I can honestly say, I'm going to leave most of this to you because you did get to physically play it. I will say, based on the research I did and some of the gameplay that I watched, that although the story was pretty stereotypical, all the way up to a flying monster called tuberculosis, like, all right, do your thing, I guess. I think that it was good for an arcade rail shooter if you just wanted to go in, drop some quarters in, shoot some shit, and call it a day. Do I think that it was a true Silent Hill game? No. Would I call it something like that? Would I even put it in the same metric? No. Was it probably fun to play? Sure. As a Silent Hill fan, would I like to? Absolutely. Like, I'll keep an eye out for it should I ever run into it. Otherwise, this had fucking shit to do with anything else.
Like, it's weird because it's a prequel to everything.
But it's also not.
It's also not, because I'm not sure it's because the little girl died.
Yeah.
And then she's just remained there dead, not hurting anybody. But then when like Alyssa shit started happening in Silent Hill, like decades later, then that resurrected another little girl evil. Like, it's so insane. It's kind of why, I'd rather something be insane rather than be super nothing. And if it was just like another variant of Silent Hill Origins, rando guy just comes to town, like, but at least they try to present another crazy threat that's not Silent Hill. It's very much a what if game, like, what if this crazy shit happened instead or before, blah blah blah.
And I almost feel like that's what they pushed it to be, because it was like, oh guys, so about which I literally said this when I was talking about how horror games and horror films go through rotational genre splits. So, like, 1 year it's about vampires, 1 year it's about demonic entities, like, God forbid I'll never see a good werewolf film, but that's not the point. So, like, with Silent Hill, though, and with this, it would not shock me if this was during the rise of, like, shipwreck films or, like, sea-bearing films, because they wanted to really implement and drive home the, like, like, they were on a cruise and she got yeeted off the boat. Like, good luck, goodbye. I also think, though, that the excuse comes up that this was just an easy, interlaid, quick spin horror tale to give for an arcade game, which was never intended to be more than, like, an hour or two in total play. Because, like, you want people to move on. You don't make money on... you don't make quarters if you have a good player who's just barreling the storyline.
Exactly.
But in terms of, like, what it was, it didn't play on the deity. It didn't play on, like, the fact that there's a cult that worships this god. Like, where did this come from? There's no concept. It's just this pissed off little phantom girl who's like, yeah, listen, fuck my mom, though. And then that's it. So, personally, for me, having never played the game, because you'll have to speak on the mechanics, it looks a little messy for me, even for a shooter. But then again, it depends on the gun you used.
I mean, at the time we were on, like, House of the Dead 4 by now. So does it play as well as that? No, it doesn't. It, like, again, and visually it's bad. Like, it's like they had a very small budget. Like, it looks like a bad PS2 budget title almost. But, like, it's just so hammy that and it's so the opposite of Silent Hill that like I love it even more.
Yeah.
Like I if it wasn't Silent Hill, it was called like Boo Haunted House or whatever, or Mist Town, you know.
Mist Town. Wow. Oh my God.
Fogville. So I don't know if I'd like it more or worse. I think I'd probably like it worse because then it has no name recognition, or it's not something you can point and laugh at, or
No.
like you know.
Or
so,
call it
but I don't know
separate.
where that puts it. I feel bad. It's like like Silent Hill 4 has so much more
To it.
potential and
Yeah.
artistry put into it. So I don't know, but how, like, if you were to say gut reaction, where should this go?
No more than 4, personally.
No
Just
more
be,
than 4.
it feels like a lazy storyline. It feels like a storyline that got rushed and pushed for the sole sake of throwing it into an arcade shooter that they could make quarters on. It feels like they kind of gave filler story that didn't even make sense to the rest of what Silent Hill represented. So I'm sticking with that. I don't know. I feel like no more than 4.
So you know what? I just you saying that right now, me prefacing by saying like it's just better than 4. It's not a 2. So
No.
therefore 4 it shall be.
I'm down.
I think that's totally fair. Even though it's like we're halfway through, there's only maybe 3 of the remaining games you like one can even really say anything about. So
Yeah. Which works,
Yeah.
because we can kind of speedball the ones that we know are going to be underliers anyway, so.
Yeah. All right, so, on the device that is the best for horror gaming, the cell phones, we have Silent Hill Orphan. Now, neither of us, I'm pretty sure, play this because it is on a cell phone from like 2007,
Yeah.
something like that.
It's 2007, and it's also like ridiculous to try to get your hands on. Like, you have to use a weird emulator, and it's weird.
Yeah, and every time I've gone down that road, I've regretted it. So Silent Hill Orphan is interesting in that it is its own standalone thing. It is basically a point-and-click game, like when you look at a just literal picture, and then you press north, south, west, east, and then just go. And as far as I could tell, there's no combat in it. So it's basically just a lot of text, a lot of reading. Not sure why this was greenlit, but it exists. I could not even see a reason. Like, there's no music in it. It's those cell phone games where I think it's like you can pick between music or sound effects, perhaps. I mean, 2 star is all I can really say.
Yeah, so again, having a will clarify, did not play it. Once again, like, I don't have a personal investment. I like text-based games sometimes. I do think that they have a very solid place occasionally. I think that what I did do in research on Orphan, the whole concept of like, what is it? Here's Ben, Moon, and Karen, and like, it just. I mean, but it's true though. Is like you're basically playing chapters of this game that implement nothing really but visuals to these characters that you're supposed to be playing as, and then like Moon finds Ben's body and is told to like unalive themselves, and like it's messy. And I feel like they tried to put something that could have been really cool in execution into a really mildly stacked mobile game that had nothing but pictures. Like, if I had voice acting, if I had a full storyline base, if I was able to really like nut myself in, I'd be good to go. But there was nothing about this that made me want to enter the room or nut. So I was just left with like, okay, so, you know, we know that Karen talks to Alessa, sort of, but then she gets her memory back, and she just wanted, like, Alessa wanted revenge. And so you're getting aspects of Silent Hill via Alessa, but if you don't know what's going on, this game doesn't make sense, and you really don't get a whole lot of what's going on other than a little bit of sprinkled backstory with some events that took place, like, forever and a day ago, which you would not understand if you had not played the other games. But I don't know, I agree. I think that there's really not a lot to it. Like, again, having not played it, I don't disagree with you being 2.
One positive, one further negative is further negative being it's still too early where visuals, even if it's just still pictures, they're not creepy or well rendered still visuals. Like, it's not it looks very cartoony almost, approaching that. So that doesn't help. One positive, the name Silent Hill Orphan sounds awesome. Like if you told me that's the next name of a Silent Hill game, I was like, oh, cool. What does that entail? That can mean this or that. So like when you start up a text-heavy adventure with not much sauce, it's kind of like, oh, okay.
Unless you're going in knowing that, that'd be a completely different thing. But like that's not how it was proposed. They tried to throw in a storyline that could have been better. Like, I could totally see myself playing something called Orphans, just like you could, if it were a console or a PC title, and it had more substance, but there was just not enough. And I guess that kind of leads into, Silent Hill The Escape, which was another point of, app mobile game. This one, you at least got Akira, which is cool. But then we have another piece of shit shooting game that nobody asked for.
You do, and on 2010 phones, I believe.
This still would have been fairly early, so I still think this was 07, 08 for The Escape.
07, 08, okay.
Yeah,
I wasn't 100% on that.
No, this was the rise of mobile games, where I think a lot of companies were discovering that this was the technology, and why play at home when I could just play on my phone? Yeah. But it suffered a lot, and this wasn't just Silent Hill. There was a lot of series that went through that suffering of, but what if we could take it with us? This was weird. It was here's a character, I've got to shoot them backwards, and that's it. That's the
Pretty
bread
much.
and butter.
I mean, it is more visually interesting than Orphan. Even if Orphan's illustrations were creepier, this is a 3D game, but you're basically it's a first-person shooter kind of, but not really, because it's still a rail shooter, and you are going down 3D hallways and blasting monsters, but it's levels, and you're finished in 45 minutes. But there's monsters. They look half decent.
Repetitive.
But it's pretty much. Yeah, it's pretty much what you'd expect for this. And The Escape is that sounds like an escape room or a ride or something. So could you not have called it something else? I don't know. But I don't know whether this is better. I don't know if it's better than Silent Hill Orphan or No, I don't think so, right?
I'm gonna lowball it at a 2, solely because 1, there's no playability. Beyond your first 45 minutes, or if you're bored, if you're on a flight and you're like, fuck it, let me just find something to do.
I'll take out my 2008 cell phone.
Just and it's a tap game, right? So you're not doing anything but sitting there tapping anyway. And if I want to play a click game, I'm gonna play click holding. So it's just, I don't know. I don't feel like this is something beyond a really basic joke game to fill time. So there's no playability, there's no basic storyline. The fact that you could play as the Shiba Inu is pretty hilarious, but but it really,
I saw that.
Yeah, it really literally seems like it just would have been a simple, fun, no thought put into it whatsoever. I'm gonna sit at it 2, and I'm good with that.
Okay. It's fucked up to say, but I'll say it. It's it doesn't have the nuance of Silent Hill the arcade.
No. At least the arcade had a storyline, though. That's what I mean. It had something to go with it.
Exactly. So this one, Silent Hill Downpour, is absolutely in that other conversation of, holy shit, did you have potential to be something maybe special? And it just doesn't come together. Very close, but just I think just on a technical level and the way the game looks and some of the creepy elements, not Akira Yamaoka, but the other American composer did the soundtrack for this and did a pretty decent job.
Daniel Light.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
I think for those reasons, and the ability or the thought of, is this kind of an open world Silent Hill where I can kind of go around and do things? Not really, kind of in
Not
chunks.
like how they advertised.
Not like how they advertise. You can do side quests for other characters. That's cool. I want to do that for characters that I might meet that I like, and it doesn't quite nail that either. I will say 6 stars where my immediate feelings go, because I do like it more than Homecoming. But what do you feel, Autumn?
So I will say this, just as a mild interjection to jump the timeline. So,
sure.
After Orphan, after the escape, I just want to notate, because I'm sure somebody somewhere is going to come back and be like, well, listen, because there was a 2 and 3. We don't want to talk about Orphan 2. We don't want to talk about Orphan 3. We know.
There was 2 sequels.
So just so you guys know, there was, for some ungodly reason, sequels. But there is a game that we will come back to in a moment that technically came out in 2009. But for Downpour in 2012, I will defend Downpour a little bit. And I will defend Downpour a little bit because although I am a little bit bitter and a little grumpy about the fact that they advertised this as something that was supposed to be a lot bigger than it actually turned out to be. And I say that because when they initially kind of presented the game, they were like, yeah, it's, it's a lot more open world. Like, this is the first time we've seen Silent Hill like this, where, like, it's not as directional, where you're forced to go this way. Like, okay, but no, we were still handheld a little bit, but thanks, guys.
Yeah.
I do think that because of the jump between Shattered Memories in 2009 up to 2012, not only did we have some advances with technology, we had graphic advancement, and then we had a lot of stuff kind of trickling in that they wanted to utilize for Downpour, which included the concept of open world. In terms of gameplay itself, I think that it played pretty much the same as some of the former Silent Hills with, the concept of, like, the melee versus, like, what can I use for, like, when do I run, when do I, actually utilize my, my equipment. Okay, so gameplay aside, my man Murphy, my guy, Mr. Pendleton. Here's the thing. For those of you that did not touch Downpour, Downpour for once introduces the concept of a guy who seemingly comes upon Silent Hill on accident. And I say that because there's a lot of underlying things that happen. Like, Murphy is an escaped convict. Period. End of story. Like, this dude's prison material. He knows he's prison material. And it's almost up to you to decide whether or not Murphy's actually a piece of shit as you're playing the game. Which, again, appeals to me in terms of narrative and storyline purposes. Again, my bread and butter. Murphy being implemented and then you kind of having to work through discovering, like, him having stolen a police car and, like, winding up in this case and, like, well, okay, but what did he do? And then,
now,
like,
we've all stolen a police car once or twice in our lives. That's
right, at least. Like, damn, get on the level, Murphy. It's got to be 2 times. So,
yeah, but there are those actual moments where it presents it in more of a, flashbacks and things. But yeah, no, they hammer that home, which was interesting to me as well. Yeah.
Well, especially because you find out that he's not just a murderer. He murdered someone who was actually like a truly terrible person in prison as well, which is also what caused the riot to push this. So you don't really know a whole lot about anything beyond the fact that he killed someone who hurt children, right? That's what you know. Well, then you have the introduction of his officer, Anne, who also plays an integral role in this story. Now, part of my beef is, of course, there's not... You get the boogeyman, not Pyramid Head for this one. So much in the same way that Travis had the Butcher, you get the boogeyman in this. And the boogeyman was just not, in terms of, like, character design, he wasn't as scary as I think was intended. I think that they went with something a little more normal for this because of the circumstances of the storyline. And again, that's my personal, like, go of it, whether it's true or not, who knows?
I could see that. Like, I'd subscribe to that. I'd subscribe to your newsletter on that.
Appreciate that. Send it, email it. But you really are kind of negotiating, the psychological play of, like, is Murphy a bad guy? If so, why is he a bad guy? Why does he make me uncomfortable? Because you're learning things about what his presence represents in Silent Hill and so on, and, like, who the boogeyman is to him. I liked the fact that there were almost like quests, I guess you could call them.
Yeah.
Sort of.
Kind of like side quests.
Yeah, which was kind of a cool concept. And I could see where they would have loved to have taken it, but it wasn't enough to keep the game from having its moments. I liked it as a whole. I think that as its own personal story piece to Silent Hill and what Silent Hill is overall, I liked it. I did. I do think that there were some things that they probably could have played better. I think that there were moments of character design aspects, both for Pendleton and also the boogeyman that could have been done a lot better. And there's not really a whole lot enemy-wise that made me just lose my shit.
Yeah, I was going to jump in on that. It has like the lowest enemy count, like variety.
Yeah.
Like I swear there's something like 3 or 4 enemies and they're not great either. Like there's that weird not bat, but like just hairless man ape thing. I forget what the fuck it was, but I hate it. Because it feels like it's out of another game. I get it. They don't have the designers that, the classic games did, but you can use those as reference. Like, I don't steal more stuff from the old games. So, like, I'm begging you, at least some design elements from them. But like enemies was like a big minus for me on that. But I still can't hate the game, and I do like it, especially its potential moreover than like Homecoming easily and Silent Hill 4. Like, I would have loved to have seen them do like a remaster of this, like on the PS. This was 360, PS3, so like PS4, Xbox One with some improvements and just
a revisit almost. Yeah.
I think that would have helped a little bit because there's definitely some technical aspects, and maybe you could have added like a few extras thrown in. I think that could have done something for its reputation.
I think that they got really respectfully to the team, and I use this term loosely, so like don't come for me, but like it almost got lazy with the addition of certain characters and certain character designs for enemies. And I say that because much like how we kind of were limited in the view of 4, because again, we had kind of limited villains, right? We had limited enemy selection in 4. Downpour was almost the same. Where we had like this there was not a broad selection. The boogeyman was the primary point of contact due to the fact that it played with Pendleton's storyline in its own way. The fact that, again, all of the Silent Hills, how they have their various multiple endings and so on. There were 6 endings for Downpour, depending on what happened with Anne. What I will say is that I think that I completely agree with you about there having been a position to maybe revisit, remaster, and add, and I would have been all for it. Again, reviewing it as something separate from what we know as Silent Hill, which is more so like the deity and Alessa's story above anything else, but kindly reminding everybody that Silent Hill is many places, not one place. I will also, so remember when I told you guys that I wanted to pin a point here?
Yeah.
Okay, are you ready for me to scream? So, if you're paying attention on one of the endings for Downpour, and it's specifically a situation where there's the police car, which you're supposed to go back with Anne, because I think it's, and I'm triple checking because it's been a long time, but there's the Truth and Justice ending, where Anne is looking for revenge against Sewell, and then there's a Forgiveness and Truth and Justice ending. Forgiveness is when Anne actually forgives Murphy for what he's done, and basically they're transported outside of Silent Hill, and then she's able to like report Murphy's death and then let him escape. Right? So the cop car is kind of driving away doing its thing, right? Okay. This isn't unlike one of the endings that you get for Origins where it's Travis driving away, right? Now, I don't know if anybody remembers this, but there's a scene at the end where in the film, you'll notice, specifically Revelations, where you will notice at the end of the film that there is a Mack truck that is driving out, followed by a police car. I stood up. Okay, I watched fucking Revelations in theater. No, I deadass did. Like, and I've only done this ever twice, okay? Because I'm not that person. I don't like to mess with people's movie moments in theater, right? I'm not that guy. If it's an exciting thing, like, oh, we all stood up and clapped at Transformers, or like, oh, when Godzilla, like, way late, like, no. I stood up at the end when I saw, because I saw it before anybody else did, and at the time, my boyfriend was, like, oblivious. And I look up and I see the truck and I see the police car and I stood up and screamed and was like, "Are you fucking serious? What?" And I was like flabbergasted by the fact that they had implemented it into the movie. So from a personal perspective, Origins and Downpour for that have an additional place in my heart. So I'm going to sit Downpour at 6 also because I love it, but I think it could have been better.
Yeah, no, I agree. I forgot that they had that tease of Travis at the end. And then he never gets paid off. They never made another one. And the one that they're making now is just Silent Hill 2. So
I'll just cry about it later. It's fine. Don't worry about it. Guess I'll die.
Completely forgot about that. But yeah, 6 and Origins being together, like that totally makes sense. They're peas in a pod, really.
Yeah.
So yeah, I in my memory, I thought Silent Hill Shattered Memories was after. But yeah, you're right. It was 2009. So it was like a good few years before. I love Shattered Memories, just because it was so different this time around. A technical showpiece for the Wii. The other versions are they don't look as good. I think I would have preferred this as the original version. I'm not sure if you've read about this, but there was Climax after Origins were like talking about doing a standalone game called Silent Hill Cold Heart, where it was the same frozen snow concept, but it was like a brand new character, like a woman in college, and it was just going to be a Silent Hill game like that. And then some point down the line, I'm working on a video to figure out what exactly happened there. Why did it turn into what I think at the time was the first usage of this word for video games, which is a reimagining. Not a remake. They were very clear about this. Reimagining this, reimagine that, so that's where that came from. And I think it's such a interesting game in terms of story, in terms of cutscenes, in terms of the voice acting. I really find it intriguing what they're trying to do. Obviously, the combat things or the lack of combat things that you do are very hit and miss. Sometimes I'll play them and I'll get through them in 3 minutes. Other times I'll try to play it the exact same way and I just can't. I'm stuck going in a loop for like 20 minutes. The same generic enemies chasing you. For everything that really intriguing and awesome this game does in terms of storyline and mechanics and using the Wiimote and listening to creepy messages on your Wiimote phone, then you actually have to do those combat encounters things with the enemies, and those are always clunky. Still don't like them to this day, but it is an absolute 6 for me. I still really admire what they attempted to do, and one of the best twists in the series, I think.
I agree, and I'm not gonna I'm not gonna contest. And the reason being is Silent Hill Shattered Memories is also a favorite because, again, going back to I wanted to be a profiler. Like, the concept that they sold this game as something that would basically profile and play with you and change according to the way that you played it and the way that you looked at things or how long you looked at things, and then it gives you this readout at the end of the game, and it's just fascinating.
You were a pervert,
right? And you're like, damn, son, you gotta call me out like that. So it's
your symbol showed some cleavage,
right? Well, and then on top of it, if you stared at the hooker's phone number, or so depending on how you approach certain things would not only change, the cyclical enemies, but it also changed, the environment or the way that certain things happen. Just like you said, sometimes you'd play it and it would take 20 minutes to get through the same thing that you didn't change. So I did really, I think it was very ambitious. I think that it had a lot of really cool concept behind it that could have been pushed. And had they moved a game like this into now with the technology and eye tracking and if you put this son of a bitch in VR and you changed the concept of your variation of enemy, my God, you could have a brilliant fucking game.
You really could.
And I would love that. We'll never see it, but I would love that. My bitch, much like you, comes from the repetitiveness. I love that there's things to look at. I think that sometimes it feels like it's almost rushing you, so you don't actually get time to look around.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
And I think that the fact that it is a reimagining is definitely interesting because you do get you still get Cheryl, you still get the concept of like Harry coming in. But then like you said, the twist at the ending is so good. And then the introduction of Dr. Kaufman, where it's almost this POV and you're like, whoa, and they just throw you into it. So they don't even give you a hint of what's happening. They don't ask you anything. It's literally you answering questions for Dr. Kaufman. And you're like, do I answer for myself? Or like, who am I? Why am I? What would this person who I'm supposed to be, how would they answer? Does that matter? So I do think that that's really cool. I think that in terms of execution of gameplay, though, it did lack a lot for the actual, like, variation. Besides...
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I'm trying to... Because I know that there's going to be people who are like, well, wait a minute now. Like, yes, there's different character clothing. Yes, there's, different changes in the environment.
But exactly, that's kind of it.
Yeah, but you don't get different chase mechanics. You don't get, this varied point of like, you'll see the same enemy multiple times. Like the things that basically look like demogorgons.
I think they're called like raw shocks or something.
Yeah, something like that. So like when you run into them, it's the same thing you're running into. You're just running away from them. So
I think they get slightly sexier, like, but that's kind of it. It's hard to even tell. Like, I think there's variance on the character models, but it doesn't really matter because you're running away from them all the time, and they grab onto you or whatever. And when you're saying repetitive, it's like, yeah, you do those.
You get grabbed, you shake them, you keep running.
You keep running, and they'll throw a flare at you. But then when those sequences are done, you're back to like just walking around for the most part. But it's still like such an intriguing thing, and you're totally nailed it when you said if they did this type of game today, or it would look, play, sound so much better. Like, but not to say that even at the time this was bad, especially on the Wii. It was just fun moving your hand around to be Harry's flashlight. It's one of the best flashlights in that era of gaming for sure. And you could definitely see that climax, and Sam Barlow, who's the writer-designer of this, you could see that he's like, Silent Hill is kind of constraining my ideas.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, I need to start doing my own thing. And thus he made like Her Story, and I think the other one was like Telling Lies. Did some really cool stuff there, but like it was, I will give Konami credit to like allow a team to do something vastly different, not just like bolting better combat on.
It was ambitious, absolutely ambitious. And that is why I have to give it props, is like different events occur, you see different things, like the tape mechanic that you run into for the memory portion. I thought it was really, really cool.
And I love My Daddy is burned into my brain whenever you start off the game. I have to listen to her. I love my dad. Like it's required.
Please,
you have
Jesus.
to listen to it 3 times.
Please, let me get stop. But no, I'm right there with you. I think that Sybil is always and forever hot, but that's a whole other conversation.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'm gonna put it in a 6.
The last time I played this, my Harry said something so gross where I was literally just looking at the environment, and I looked at the poster in the high school of a bunch of cheerleaders.
Oh.
And there's like a lineup of like 7, and you don't see their faces, you just see their midriffs. And my Harry just went, number 6 every time. And I'm like, what the fuck?
So you know I think that's okay. So talking about execution of gameplay, that is a bitch. Because I like to look at everything all of the time. And it's not because I'm being gross. Like, if I had zoomed in on it to be like, oh yeah, midriff, like, that'd be different. But, like, you're looking around, you're like, oh, okay, like, what if there's mystery? Well, let's head out, Scooby Gang, there's mysteries to be solved. So, it almost, like, from a psychology perspective, it basically, like, tunnels you a little bit, so that is kind of a complaint.
Yeah.
But no, I liked Shattered Memories. I thought it was ambitious. I do and would love to see a revisit, I think, with an execution of current technology.
They should do a reimagining of it.
I almost threw up my water.
Okay. So next up, not much to say, the Silent Hill HD collection. Which, listen, I really implore anybody to do their due diligence to look on how to play the PC versions of 2 and 3.
Yeah.
There's an incredible mod that just came out that makes it literally the best version of Silent Hill 2 you could ever want to play, and not play this version. With that said, I've seen so many people that said, I love Silent Hill because I got to actually play them on this collection. And that is 100% valid, good for this to do it. But always know that you're playing the worst version available.
Yeah.
But if you're fun, especially if you have the 360 version, which never got patched, right?
Yeah.
So I almost like any HD collection can never be so bad that like you could put it like very, very low. And this isn't even like the worst one, I would say.
No.
But because these two games are so influential and like milestones in survival horror, like it makes it worse. So like I think this is generally just for me a 4-star rank. The Comic Sans alone on Silent Hill Ranch is just. And when people say, why didn't they just take the packaged game, and if they lost the source code, why didn't they just take the packaged game and backwards engineer it? Because Konami did not want to pay for that.
No.
They did not want to give the small dev team who never did anything like this the time to do that. So that's why.
I feel like this game suffered at the hands of laziness. From big corpo, right? So
big corpo.
Yeah, I feel like it was. Now, I come out of left gate saying that because, on the other hand, I got Devil May Cry HD collection.
I did too.
So
and I got Zone of the Enders HD, which was ported by the same people that did Devil May Cry HD.
Yeah. So okay, here's my thing. Silent Hill Collection came out in 2006, right? Basically what they did is they took...
So wait. There was a PS2 version that just had the old PS2 ones
combined.
This is like the HD one later. Which one do you mean?
Oh no, I mean the one that started it back in 2006 where they just they packaged them together, right?
Yeah. So, I saw that really rarely in stores, that package combo deal.
But that's my point. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and this is where you have to consider money and finance, because you didn't see a collection. Why would they push the collection, the OG collection, that was not remastered, that was just a combo, when they could make money off of 2 games?
Right.
Right? Okay, fast forward to HD. I bring up the original collection from 2006 because here we are 6 years later with an HD collection that is literally just a slightly sort of brightened up and maybe a little bit reskinned with some quote-unquote new voice acting put back into a game. And I know that the voice acting got like memed on pretty hard. And there was a lot of bitching about it. I think that, voice acting as a whole across all of the Silent Hill series had its moments and had its failures. And that's all I'll say. Like, I would by no means ever put myself as a voice actor in a position to shit on the decisions of other voice actors, because I don't think what people realize, and I say this being someone whom is a professional voice actor, and especially as someone who is a professional voice actor in independent horror, that sometimes the directions that you choose to take as a voice actor are not heard by the people who are choosing to put them into the game. So there are occasions where what you're hearing is not necessarily the direction that maybe the voice actor would have liked to take things. It's not the way that they wanted to emote it. It's not the delivery that they would have chosen. And I think that this happened more often than not sometimes in the Silent Hill collection, because you do have a lot of great voice actors or a lot of great execution, but you don't remember them from these games. You remember them from later on because of other characters, right?
Yeah.
So I bring it up because I would implore people, anytime you hear a certain line, to consider that it may not necessarily be the voice actor. It may just be the way that they were told to deliver it and the take that was chosen, right? So be kind to your voice actors. And I say that because the HD collection also kind of suffered from that periodically. There were moments where you would hear a line delivered and you were like, ooh, and you almost had to question, like, was that better or worse than the original? And the fact that they gave you the option to select which voice acting was also kind of interesting.
For 2, but not 3, if memory serves.
Specifically 2.
3 only had the original. I honestly always forget if 3 only has original or has new only.
So if I'm not mistaken, and again, it's been a long time, 3 was new only, 2 you could select.
Okay.
I think, because Troy Baker was James.
Yeah.
So that's why, and that's the reason I prefaced with some of it, because Troy Baker is a voice actor. Again, you're getting somebody who, has implemented himself as like the voice actor in certain roles, right? But then there were moments where it was like, that can't be the same person. I think that it was just a reskin. I really do. I think that you can't vote it really low because we got what we wanted and it looked kind of visually better. I think that there was some better execution. They cleaned up a few things that definitely lacked in some of the prior, but it wasn't enough to make me go, oh, wow.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's what I will sit on that one.
Versus like that Resident Evil 4 mod on PC where someone rescanned every single texture, went through texture libraries, and the game looks 1,000 times better, but still the same game. That's like, that was someone doing that over the course of 10 years. So, yeah, like that is a wow the factor that this sadly doesn't have. But I have it on 4, but is that where you kind of feel, or do you feel like it could be higher or lower?
I think 4 is a good middle ground. Like, it's not, for me, it just was, right? It didn't have the taste of the originals, but it still was an original in its own right. It just, I think that for them to push it as, this is the HD collection, like, okay, well then
you don't need any other one.
Right, then why wasn't some of this that I'm still bitching about, like, why wasn't that shit fixed too? Because that was in the originals also. So, like, what do you mean? And I feel like this was just a really hard money grab for them around the same time that they were trying to push Silent Hill back up with Downpour and Book of Memories and so on.
Yeah, because we didn't really talk about it directly, but say, around 2011, 2012, Konami was like, we're all in on Silent Hill, Downpour, the HD collection, Silent Hill Revelations, Book of Memories. And like everything failed in
all
one way or
once.
Another. Like, I mean, I guess Downpour came out of it the best, and so that's not great.
Well, and everybody wants to know why us as Silent Hill fans are so jittery about what's going on with this new resurgence of Silent Hill. You guys want to know why we're fucking nervous and why none of us have faith? That is why we don't have faith.
Exactly. Now, we're halfway through it. Two of the 4. No, there's 5 games. 2 of the 4 are out. The next one is going to be out like this month. And then there's 2 more after that, so we'll see. But not a super high batting average so far. But Book of Memories is the next one, and I remember everyone shitting on this just so super hard when it came out. Just, this is a ridiculous concept. Why would you do this? I mean, at the end of the day, to me, it's a spin-off. It could be whatever, like we had the arcade game, obviously. So, Book of Memories, I love Way Forward as a developer. They've made some really great games that I cherish deeply. This is not one of them. That being said, I think for the concept that they have and putting it's almost like why couldn't you have just made a standard Silent Hill game for the Vita? Would have looked quite nice. Nicer than Origins or something, and it's like, well, we want to do something different. I get that, but it's a 6 or a 4 off the bat. It is not a 2. Like, you can, it's just, that makes no sense, and it cannot be an 8. So 6 or 4 for me. For those that may not remember, it's a dungeon crawler Diablo-like. Silent Hill land.
I was literally gonna say that. I was literally going to say, did you mean Diablo? So, no, because that's what it is. They basically went, oh, okay, so people really liked this, so this will work on the Vita, right? And then they threw it in, gave you protagonist and then 2 other characters, and were like, yeehaw, boot scoop Bugatti, and then sent you into the world. I think that from a perspective of like the weird dream thing, that it was kind of cool that like, sure, you're running around and doing like, mass kills of these monsters, and then you're trying to like find like the collections, like the note items, and then there's like the notations about the book and like what the book represents. I'm annoyed because I think that this is another one where, because it was Infernal Engine, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think this was another game where they basically looked at it and they went, let's throw some shit out as quick as we can. What do we got for the Vita, guys? And then everybody looked at each other and went, well, I've got this notebook I've been writing shit down in. And then they looked at them and went, that's a book of memories. And then like that was the existence of this game. So it's just hard for me because if I wanted to play fucking Diablo, I would play Diablo and I would do it with a smile on my face. And this just wasn't it for me.
I remember them saying something like, oh, we decided to do this because it fits portable play better, doing little missions. And I'm like, that is not wrong, but it's wrong.
Yeah.
You made a PSP Silent Hill, like, there was a DS Silent Hill that Konami passed on. Like, clearly it can be just a shorter Silent Hill game. So I remember that reasoning, and I didn't exactly buy it.
I thought that the idea that you could, because this is an instance where you had an opportunity to make the game co-op, right? Yeah. And I think the concept of a co-op Silent Hill game, especially in today's term, where like things like Lethal Company and like Among Us and like, Demonology and like all of those styles of group co-op games, I could see how something like this could really go hard with the right kind of implementation of like long term.
Yeah.
Again, another one where it would have benefited it from now more so than back then. I think that the co-op portion, the close proximity shit, like it was messy. It wasn't always functioning correctly. I remember trying to play this and like the drop in and drop out was really shitty because it affected things. Like it just wasn't as good as it could have been.
Like imagine something like Resident Evil Outbreak, but Silent Hill, where like several people are there at once and they have to depend on each other to survive. Yep. That would have been so sick as a spin-off thing. Like, don't call that Silent Hill 6, but but no dungeon crawler and like, not scary, obviously.
I'm also gonna sit Book of Memories as a 4. I agree. I just don't have it in me to give it a 6 because like even then like they had the concept of a storyline, but it really wasn't enough to flush things out. Like, it's just, protagonist needs help from his friends. And then it's a dungeon crawler, and that's it.
Yeah. And not to say dungeon crawlers can't be scary. Like, originally, Diablo 1 and 2, quite horrific.
Of course.
But, like, Way Forward is not exactly the ones I think of when I, think
Silent
of...
Hill is not what
horror.
I think of when I say dungeon crawler, though.
Yeah.
It's just not.
You know what I think of? When I think of Silent Hill, I think of profits, big profits, 200 yen. I think of pachinko. Ding, 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 ding. So, 10 or 8 for you?
I played this.
You did not.
I played it.
Where?
San Japan.
What?
Yep. There was a section a couple years ago, and I know because Miyuji, brilliant musician, by the way, amazing person. I've known Miyuji a very long time. Miyu was at that San Japan along with Mr. Creepypasta and myself and a bunch of like the Creepypasta crew, right? So I remember this distinctly because they had a section of San Japan that was like pachinko machines and like various gaming areas and things like that. And Miyu comes barreling up to me and he's like, Autumn! And he like shakes me by the shoulders and I'm like, what, Miyu? And he goes, they have Silent Hill and he like points and I'm like, the what? And he goes, pachinko! And I was like, bullshit, motherfucker. So we go back and forth for a minute and finally he goes, I'm going to go play it. And I'm like, Don't put your money in that. Don't give them what are you doing? And he's already gone. And I'm so mad.
I want you to end the story, but I wound up playing it until 5 a.m.
I may have
What?
not.
No.
So
I believe you.
I got so mad, and I followed, and like sure as shit, I come up and there it is, and I stare at it, and I think I made a video because I think it was around the same time that I looked at him, he looked at me meme was out.
Oh yeah.
And I had a video on my phone. I will find it and send it to you, but I looked at it and I went, I can't. And Ellis goes, you know you have to, right? Like the circle cannot be completed. And I was like, fuck. So I played it. And I played it long enough for me to go, I'm not putting any more energy, time, money, or existence into this piece of shit ever again. How dare you, Konami? How dare you insult me? If I wanted to gamble my life's funds away, I would call my mom and follow in her footsteps, and then I left. So, you know. Obviously it's a 10. Obviously.
The cutscenes of this, like most pachinko games, they're so over the top that they are like I'm glad these cutscenes exist because they're so hilarious because it's like James and Pyramid Head and there's explosions and like yen signs. Like it is amazing whenever I see these pachinko cutscenes for like franchises that I love, like Metal Gear or like Fatal Fury, and it's hype as shit. You're like, let's go! And then you're like, oh, right. Yeah, it's a gambling game. So
you guys literally pushed all of your time and energy into this to make quarters. That's it.
Yeah.
Like, I don't disagree though, right? And that's the problem is that when you think about gambling as a whole, or you think about even kids stylistic gambling games of just like, let me put a quarter in and whatever, right? Regardless of it, it is still at its core meant to visually draw someone in and keep their attention with noises and flashes and cool bang bangs just
how
long
you get
enough.
me.
Right. Well, no, but it's true. And especially people like as an ADHD person diagnosed, like sometimes you just need the loud screaming and bright noises. So yes, the video pieces were like, oh, that's cool. But please God, don't ever do this to me again. My God, what have you done?
Think about this. What if it got really meta and the cutscenes like weren't James or whatever, but it was like a new character, and that character's like sin was like gambling, and it got like it started like. It started getting whole meta on you, where it's like, dare you put in more quarters? Pyramid Head will punish you.
I can't talk to you anymore. I can't. I've got to go. I'm mad because you're not wrong. But like, even if that was the implementation and they were like, yeah, so we introduced this and like they did it with like corrupt, sneaky like advertising purposes of like, oh, you guys got really into throwing your money into that pachinko game. Guess what, bitch? Your time's come. And then they released a game just about that. And then you were like, oh, fuck, that was me. Right? Like, that would have been the sickest ass marketing where it's like got videos of people like for hours sitting there playing this and gambling money into this thing and just losing. And then like they put that in the game. Like, no, that'll fuck somebody up in real life. And honestly, sometimes it's needed. And like, sure, I could go for that. But that's not what happened. It's not what happened.
It's like someone gets really addicted to playing this, and it's just like, no, the only monster here is the gambling monster that has affected your loved one. I call him Gambler.
No, oh God,
so,
no. This is his friend tuberculosis. God.
What is this? This is a 0, yeah?
Here's my problem.
There's one other game here that might be a 0, but
I'm about to listen. I'm going to throw down for my own reasons. So here's my thing. I don't think, as a whole, the pachinko machine should be included in anything. So it automatically is a flat 0 for me because it is not a representation of true gameplay. In terms of genre, it's its own special release of what it is because it's still at its core, per the fandom, exists to fill slots, literally. But do I think that it necessarily has a place on this list? No. Do I want to make it a 0 for that reason? Yes. Do I think that this was literally Konami's, push to try to continue to make money and extort people out of their fandom, just like they're managing to do this year? Yep. So here we are again. So 0.
It's here for literally for the lulz. So That's all it's really good for. So in a very big case of tonal whiplash, we have PT, which I really thought about it. I'm like, should this be included? At the end of the day, when you finish the game, it says Silent Hill. So,
yep.
I never mind what I said before about Silent Hill 4 or Downpour about most untapped potential. The very idea that we were going to get a whole game that I'd assume would be filled with several levels, areas, sequences, whatever you want to call it, with the ideas that nowadays we take for granted. Rooms that change like on the spot, like repetitive, like that style that PT basically said, here's just a taste of what you can expect. A little esoteric, yes. A little like, what am I actually supposed to do here? Yes. Is it the most mainstream thing that would have been maybe a gigantic success for mainstream horror gamers? Maybe not, but like, holy shit, it probably would have turned the whole genre on its head. And even just this teaser kind of did it.
Yeah.
Because there's PT likes. It just spawned something just by this. The fact one day I'll have to sit down and just catalog it all, but the fact that it's just like Konami was just so not wanting to work with Kojima anymore, and we didn't get Norman Reedus in the game, we didn't get Guillermo del Toro being part of it, and like that all went somewhere to another franchise that Konami has nothing to do with
Norman
anymore.
Reedus and the Funky Fetus.
When I saw, this came out, I was just like, okay, yeah, it's a weird Kojima thing, cool. And then when people started figuring it out and getting to the end, and me seeing that screen, like, that this was what, 2014,
2014, yeah.
It had felt so long since something was truly exciting. Like, up until that point, where it's like completely blindsided, my flabber 100% gassed it. Like, and I even the Silent Hill stuff that we're having now is not doing that. Like, some things look interesting, Townfall, and even 2 remake, but like nothing will capture that lightning in a bottle moment of like, oh my god, this is a new Silent Hill, oh shit, Kojima, oh shit, Hideo Kojima.
Yep.
And Guillermo del Toro.
When you hear Guillermo del Toro coming in to anything, especially, with his way of storytelling, the concept of character designs that he's done, Devil's Backbone, Pan's Labyrinth, fucking Blade 2, Hellboy, like, and then of course more recently you've got Nightmare Alley, Shape of Water, and so on. And like, I bang my head against a wall over PT to this day, because we had something that, although unhinged because Kojima, you had someone that proposed an idea and went, but what if, and then utilized the Fox engine to do it. Made it cyclical so that it was self-punishing depending on what you did. And somehow, despite being the same game over and over, realistically, or so you thought, was never boring. Because there was always something new for you to discover on that initial playthrough. And even then, there was still more shit to discover and find every time you played thereafter, depending on what you did and how it affected the room in general. And I think that going from 2012, where we had Downpour, the HD collection, and Book of Memories, and then time skipping to 2014, where suddenly, quote, quote, playable teaser came out of left field and everybody was like, what the fuck is this? And then you get to that end scene and it's like, no. And then you're just screaming and you have that moment. Meanwhile, this does have to technically be considered part of the tier list solely because it was an initial planned installment with Silent Hills as the full title. And again, from what we have kind of learned or ascertained or picked up on, I mean, it would have been so good. And there was arguments that the game itself and the concept of Lisa and what's occurring wouldn't have actually had anything to do with the true game of Silent Hills. But of course, we have a lot of like, but maybe if, or potentially though, and we don't actually have a lot of fact. And it doesn't even matter at this point anymore because it's so far out the loop. I loved PT for its own thing, for its own vision, because it was new, it was a fresh concept, it was something that we hadn't seen, especially when we had just finished Downpour. And then suddenly we find out this is Silent Hills.
Only 2 years before this, too.
Exactly. And then we not only have the Fox Engine graphic jump, but we've got Guillermo who's stepping up, and to which all of us are like, oh my god, what's he gonna do? Like, what are these gonna look like? Like, I remember stopping and going, holy shit, those monsters are gonna be fucking metal. And I was stoked. And then you do have moments with, the apparition with Lisa, quote unquote Lisa, the apparitions. You've got like the door slamming in your face when you try to look through the door crack. Like, there was a lot of really horrific moments that kept you on the edge of your seat that was occurring with PT, and I am so sad and will forever be disappointed. But I gotta say, for me personally, I think that the execution, the refreshing of an idea, the idea that even though we are acknowledging it wasn't at its core technically Silent Hill, but it really was a Silent Hills, I want to put it at an 8 because I hold it close to me, and I think it was a great execution for a new idea.
I absolutely 100% agree. That's just what I was thinking, because it's again an idea. As much as scary as it is, as inventive as it is, as weird as it is, it's not a full game yet. It's just the idea of one, the promise of one, you could say.
Yes.
I asked Kojima to take me there, but he never did. So.
Poor Kojima. Goodbye. Goodbye, my man.
Maybe that other horror game that he's making with a bunch of filmmakers will be interesting. We'll somehow deliver on that a little bit.
Fingers crossed.
Without the Silent Hill IP, it's like, sadly, it's just another case of like, what could have been. Yeah. But because it was publicly, available, if this was like a leaked build that someone found on some fucking PS4 hard drive, then it's like, no, that doesn't count. That's not something that had the intent to be like a thing or made for public consumption quite yet. What since this was and was going to be a Silent Hill project eventually is and it's 8 because just what its potential could be is like a lot more exciting than like fucking Silent Hill Arcade or Book of Memories or whatever. So
I've been rooting for berries and other things for several seasons now. I like to make jams. I sell them in town. I could bring you some. Maybe you and your family would like that.
You should keep moving. You're on my property.
Well, I am sorry for that.
I'm going to be honest, the next game that we have, I did not actually play because I don't understand what it is or where you can get it, but Silent Hill Ascension is technically the lowest rated Silent Hill thing to exist.
It should be.
But
I did play it.
But not... Okay, good. I was like, I'm pretty sure they played it. But I saw it only has 2 accredited critical reviews. Like, IGN and one other place reviewed it. That's it. Fans reviewed it for sure, but no one else bothered. I was like, that can't be right. Is this some sort of like prototype version? I'm like, no, that's it. So what actually is it? Is it on the PS5 or is it just a phone game? I researched this. I couldn't find the answer.
So basically, I played it on the phone.
Okay.
Technically, there is a portal through PC, but I personally played it through through mobile, right? So we're kind of almost looking at another mobile game for all intents and purposes. I was initially excited for Ascension, to the point where I defended it on Twitter or X or whatever it is now. Like I defended it when it came out because I was like, no, I want to see what they do with it, right? Because
like, don't shit on it immediately.
Exactly. Like, give me a fucking minute to play it. Like, when I started asking me, I was like, have you even touched it? No, I won't fucking touch it. And I'm like, just shut the fuck up because I would like to. So like, calm down. This is the first thing I've gotten out of Silent Hill since 2014, Todd.
Yeah.
So my And this is where I then have to take a back seat and go, okay, well, fuck. Because basically the concept of Ascension and what made me interested is that it was interactive, which is the first time we'd really kind of seen something like this. But they took a storytelling mechanic, much in the same way that we had Supermassive, right, with Until Dawn and
right.
that kind of stuff, or even Heavy Rain. So they took stylistic choice mechanic and implemented it into a live, almost like Twitch chat controlled style voting mechanic.
Okay, yeah.
And here's where it went south. Because the very first, because I tried it for a couple of weeks worth, because basically what would happen is during a certain day at a certain time, they would drop a new quote unquote episode, and whatever had happened prior that was voted on by the majority would translate to the new episode, and then you would be faced with new decisions throughout the game, as well as like swipe mechanic interactions and that kind of thing, right? So basically they would give a short vote period, and whatever the majority voted for is how things would go down. Now here's the problem with that, because there are people who legitimately like to play games and actually play to consider the situation for what it is and actually think critically, like use comprehensive thinking skills. And then there's people who are like, it'd be really funny if that guy died, right? And then they vote that way because they're fucking assholes. So that's where this hit a terrible pacing. And then pop in with a concept of pay to play and like, well, you know, it is just, it got so messy so fast. And I knew the very first day, the very first release, when I started seeing how the voting was going and like people intentionally trying to get certain characters into precarious situations, not because they deserved it, but literally because they thought it was going to be funny to do it. And you watch the chat, it was the most toxic, nasty, stupid shit I've ever seen in my life. And I wanted no part of it as a Silent Hill fan. So with that aside, it was messy. It wasn't smart decisions. Konami stepped up and basically went, what can we do to fuck with Silent Hill fans now? Just kidding. We're going to shit on you further, and here's how we're going to do it. I think that from a story perspective, they went a little bit too hard in the direction of trying to like super massive it with some of the decisions, especially with where the writing could have been really good. But because you left it up to people choosing how things were going to go, it just got really bad and really messy.
Like the Dark Pictures games are, it was one of them where it's like you can play a mode like that, but it's locally with a couple people in the room and they're voting, and that's fine because you trust your friends. There might be like a razzer or two in the room, but like whatever, like they're one voice that you can call out, not, you know, or whatever. But when you're doing it with like potentially thousands of people, like it just seems from day one this was a bad idea.
Well, and I'm so sorry. Just real quick to piggyback, because it's relevant to that specific execution. Just as an example, most recently, the casting of Frank Stone came out, right? Yeah. So that was a partnership between Supermassive and DVD's team, which is Behavior, right? So I bring it up specifically, though, because casting of Frank Stone implemented the Twitch mechanic where your viewers could vote on the decision. There are instances where you could veto it, but for the most part, they made, like, their decision was God, right? So it was really interesting to look back on something like Ascension and see in real time how something could go so terrible solely because the chat thought it was funny to fuck with you. Sorry, continue.
Is it the only way to play the game? Like, can you play it without people voting?
I'm gonna level with you. I played it just long enough to get a little bit into the storyline, noticed that everybody was being shitbags, and then realized that basically Konami was just trying to shell us out as much money as possible into their pockets that they could before it ended. And I gave up after that because they didn't give me a reason to give a shit about the protagonists. It got to a point where it was so convoluted that I wasn't even sure why I was bothering anymore. And even with the implementation of like where they tried to take it, it just wasn't enough to carry the game. So it's trash.
I was always kind of like, oh, maybe I should try to see what this is. And then I read something about, I don't know if this is 100% confirmed, but like some elements of the game are like just AI. Like some of the script is AI too. And that's when I was like, It seemed like, yeah, like I think at the very least it was someone's like, there's something off about this dialogue, or there's some, or I don't know, is 100% confirmed, but that's enough for me to go, yeah, no. So the resurgence of Silent Hill not going very well so far. Is this 2 stars at 1 star? Since I will defer to you 100% since you actually put a little bit of time into it.
I mean, frankly, I think that they tried. I think certain aspects of the team definitely tried. I would never shit on a dev team for doing what they could. I think that there was a handful of really cool monster mechanics, so I'm going to give them a little bit of credit for a couple of the monsters that came out of Ascension, just because visually they were kind of cool, but I don't think it was enough to save it. So I will only say 2-star for the sole purpose of the fact that an attempt was made. I think that there were parts of it that, you know, could have been really good. I think that the relationship mechanic, again, much like Supermassive, the relationship mechanic concept was there, but it was not enough. So I'm good with leaving it at a 2 for only a handful of reasons.
Yeah, if you really think about the way you said it, and a team attempted to make a thing, it is a little bit more admirable than, like, yeah, pachinko, like, at the end of the day. So our last one, Silent Hill Short Message, which I did play, and it is fine. It is exactly what most first-person walking simulator indie horror games are. I'm not sure if you read about this, but the team that made Short Message approached Konami, because Konami years ago were like, hey, we want to make new Silent Hill games. And they said, well, here's our tech demo for a Silent Hill 2 game. And they're like, this is fine. And then Blooper Team were like, here's our version of that. And they said, that's the one we're going with. So this team originally pitched to be the ones to remake Silent Hill 2, but Konami still were like kind of like intrigued. So they're like, well, why don't you make this instead? So that's kind of how that came about. And yeah, it's fine. It's not great. So how do you feel about it?
I was so excited to get my hands to the point where I made Ellis sit with me, and we played it in one sitting, right? Which obviously it really kind of was a one sitting game.
Yeah, because it's like an hour or two, right?
Depending, like, you can take your time a little bit, or how many times you die because of cyclical chase mechanic shit. But, you know, whatever. I definitely am not mad about it, clearly. Here's my beef. I sat down, so excited to finally have my hands on something that was like, okay, I'm back again. I'm in this place. Like, this is a self-proclaimed Silent Hill title. What are we looking at? And then I read that they were basically trying to push the idea of social media and the damage that social media can do, especially for young teenage girls, right? Like, I saw the discussions about that. And again, psychology be damned, because we're in Silent Hill. Oh, well, that must have something to do with this time. That'll be cool, because obviously that is something that directly affects us as content creators. So let's see how this goes. I have never in my life, within the first like 10 minutes of starting to find out about a character's backstory, did I immediately go, oh, I'm gonna fucking hate you. You're a piece of shit. Oh, okay. No, but actually, though, you're a piece of shit. I'm sorry. Are you crying victim? Oh, you're the... No, so... Okay, so now I know you're not the victim. I have personal beef with this game because of the storyline.
Okay. Yeah, I was talking just about gameplay-wise. Like, it's the same thing that you see in a lot of games. But yeah, the story stuff, I kind of... I'm going to be honest, like, I mashed through some of it. Like, I was just like, yeah, I just want to see what the game is. It's free!
Yeah, and it deserves to be. It deserved to be.
Okay.
So... All right,
going.
let me jump to your thing about the gameplay, right? From a gameplay perspective, I obviously, like, I pride myself on being somebody that, although I'm sure it doesn't appear to be like my main, it's not my brand, I think a lot of people recognize. I pride myself on playing independent horror games, streaming them, reviewing them, let's plays. Like, I love doing that because I love finding very amazing gem-like, indie horror games like Diamonds in the Rough that just don't have any attention and are fucking amazing. And I've had the luck and the the ability to have found several demos for games that are soon to come out or have come out that I was blown out of the water, right? And I was so excited about it. Some and quite a few of them were this stylistic kind of walking mechanic where it's more so it's still very psychological, but it's less about the direct combat or about the direct I'm gonna wield an axe and hit things and try to run away, and more so about the environmental aspect, the storytelling, which again, I'm a whore for narrative. This game presented itself as something that was borderline walking simulator with psychological horror intermingled with something that was supposed to be good narrative. And it had me in the first half, oh boy. And from basics of gameplay, yes, it's very simple. It's very basic gameplay. There's nothing overly complicated, which I think sometimes for people who like narrative and stylistic narrative, that is not a bad thing. I think having, point and click style, discovery type mechanics in a game is very useful, especially for people who don't necessarily want the extra stress of having to run and gun, right?
Yeah.
So I do think that it had its benefit with what it tried to do. And then here's where we get sticky. You run into the game's, I guess technically their final boss, their prominent antagonist, basically Sakura, right? Or Sakura, sorry, excuse me. So Sakura is the blossom flower looking creature that is chasing you at the end of the game. Whom you find out, of course, is supposed to be the representation of Anita's friend Maya. That's her manifestation, we'll call it, since it's supposed to be Silent Hill. I think that implementing something like Sakura was amazing because it was a beautiful but still haunting character to keep running into until it got so fucking boring with this borderline ass, boring, convoluted chase mechanic where you would hit a wall and that was the end. It took 2 seconds to fuck it up, and boy am I bad at math. Because there was nothing redeeming about it. I got bored, I got pissed off, it stopped being scary when I would cut corners and suddenly she'd be there. I was over it by the end because it just was not enough to salvage it, right? So from a gameplay mechanic, it was repetitive, I got bored. I was so excited by the fact that there was this cool concept and the paper bag, bullies and all this other bunch of bullshit. And the messaging, the fact that you're texting her the entire time was kind of a cool implemented mechanic. I thought that was a nice mechanic to add in. Now, to the story. I will preface this with very careful handling and very polite handling. Obviously, I would tell anyone who has not played this or is not aware of Silent Hill, the short message and what it entertains in topic. So this is a point where I would, and I'm sure, Mr. McMuscles yourself, I'm sure you probably handle things, your channel, in your own way. I just will tell anybody who has not played or doesn't know, this does have to do with a trigger warning of suicide, so please be aware of that. Okay. So, and I specifically state that clearly because it is 100% necessary for the telling of the storyline for this game. The whole point of the plot follows Anita, who winds up getting text messages from her deceased friend Maya, who, you find out, had committed suicide, right? So as you're playing this game and you're going through what is inherently a walking simulator, you're talking to Maya, and Anita is very confused. It goes over subjects like bullying, impacts, of course, like I mentioned before, it's talking about social media and the push of that kind of thing. With that said, I fucking hate Anita. I have never in my life wanted to be no, you deserved it. You absolutely deserved what you got. And honestly, I really kind of wish you hadn't made it out at the end, but that's just me. Because I've never, in a Silent Hill game, because this is it, this is the last one, out of all of the fucking Silent Hill games, with the exception of maybe James. And even James came back and was like, yeah, I kind of fucked up, though. Like, I'll admit it.
Yeah.
Like, James shrugged about it and was like, I killed my wife, but, like, my bad. Like, I'm sorry.
Come on.
I mean, she was dying, though, right? Like, Anita is insufferable. She's whiny. She plays the victim the entire fucking time. As a player, she tries to convince the player, whether you realize this or not, she tries to convince, and I say you generally, she tries to convince the fucking player that, like, she was the person who was, like, you know, being, like, messed up, and, like, how dare Maya treat her that way, and all this bunch of bullshit, only to find out that Anita, and, like, again, I'm not, I won't be that guy, I'm gonna stop. You find out that basically Maya's death is inherently Anita's fault.
Yeah.
That's the TLDR. I'm not going to get into anything further because I've got big feelings for a lot of personal reasons and my own, like, inherent hatred towards this character. I think that it is a testament to approaching things poorly. I think it's a testament to taking someone who was inherently put in a really bad situation, who blamed the bad situation and basically became a really shitty person, to someone who just wanted to try to be better and show them that there were ways to be better, and then utilize that as an excuse to destroy the one good thing that they had in their life. So I took this story very personal, and maybe that's why I have so much personal hatred for it. With that said, was it a decent storyline? It was decent. Was it, like, awe-inspiring and awakening? Like, no. It was a pretty typical, like, whodunit urban legend style bullshit story about social media and how it can be your downfall. Like, that's really all it was. It was just a quick tale. Do I think that it implemented what Silent Hill truly is at its core? I certainly think it tried. I think from a gameplay perspective, it wasn't anything, like, mind-numbingly amazing. The text message thing to this point had been done before, but I did think it was cool to see in something that was supposed to be stylistic and told as a Silent Hill game. I don't think it was enough to save it. I don't think that it culminated what truly was a Silent Hill game beyond the fact that Anita was basically facing her grief and her own personal shit to what she felt responsible for inherently causing Maya's death.
Yeah.
But my personal bias aside, I don't think that it's good enough to put it above a 4. I don't think that it necessarily deserves to be below a 2. But I don't think for any reason it stands out to something above a 4 for me personally.
I kind of think, yeah, like, not any higher than a 4. That'd be ridiculous. But at the same time, it's like, just what's going on down here, like, either absolutely nothing or, like, the worst implementation of, you know, modern technology with Ascension and just being something absolutely no one wanted and it be costing money versus look at the whiplash between two very similar things when you think about it.
Yep.
Both free, both short, like, experiences, like, let's just call them that, experiences. But yeah, one doing things much more intriguing, much more, like, promise of things to come. The fact that I don't know where the onus should be put on a lot of the game's issues, especially like the running away from the Sakura stuff and the storyline stuff. The storyline stuff is just, like, to me, it's kind of like, let's try to do a James thing or even a Murphy thing where you're not, like, the protagonist. That's really hard to do. It's so hard to do. You should probably not try in most circumstances unless you're really, really confident in your idea. But yeah, especially in this day and age, like, taking, like, real world topics and the way that they get implemented today and being like, but what if Silent Hill? Yeah. Like, I think that's always a bad idea. That's just...
So here's my problem. I love the idea of taking something so critical and real life as, as the damage that social media can do to a person. I mean, we've seen it firsthand, unfortunately. And that's just a fact. Like, that's no feelings towards anything. It is a fact. I think there is a very careful and specific way to handle this type of topic when implementing it into something where you are trying to tell such a hard story, Silent Hill at its core has always been something where you find a character somewhat redeemable for different reasons, which is where you get those multiple ending options. So for example, going back to 2, James had his moments where, you kind of saw moments of regret with James where you were like, no, like he did regret what he did, but then you find out the truth of like that she was sick and what was going on, but that he was kind of being a dill hole at the back end. But it really is up to you to deduce, are these things about James and what James did and the way that he chose to carry, are they redeemable enough for me to try to work towards this other ending where I would like to see him redeemed, right? And that is really what Silent Hill and all of the Silent Hills, regardless of character, that's what they were. I didn't find a single goddamn thing redeemable about this girl. And they pushed so hard, like, well, but she had such a sad childhood. Like, look at her. She, like, this happened to her. And I'm like, okay, she could have picked to not be a shitbag. That's fine. Like, I don't know if you know this, but everybody's got a decision to make. James, even though he had his moments to be that guy, at least had moments of redeemability where he came back and he's like, oh my God, like, here's my regret. Here's me pouring my heart out. Not once did I ever feel that from this girl to have made it a true Silent Hill, like, core-based game where I could have been like, I could see another ending to this game, even though it's a short. I could see another ending where she basically comes back and is like, I'm redeemable and here's why. Or like, I regretted this and here's why. Like, it never at any point seemed like she legitimately felt regret for what she'd done or what she'd caused.
Yeah. Do you think it's almost like a situation where there's just too much information given about the main character and everything about the relationship and through the lens of modern stuff like texts and bullying versus like something that's more like, not in your face, a little bit left to the imagination. Like, yes, it explains things towards the end, but like it's paced out over the course of, 6-8 hours versus cram everything into an hour and a half. You get what I mean?
I do. And I absolutely do think that has a lot to do with it as well. I think that there is a balance, a very fine-tuned balance between something that is intended to be, well, I'll put it this way. It's a tease, right? Like, you don't go into a strip club expecting to see boobs immediately. You're like, no, let me hit a burlesque first. Like, I like the show. I want the tease.
Let me warm up.
Right. So in this case, though, this game basically, unlike PT was our tease. PT was our like, oh yeah, that's a feather boa off my shoulder. Hon hon wee wee baguette. And then here comes Short Message years later, and Short Message is like, so anyway, the robe's on the ground, the money's on the counter, I'm gonna get out of here.
Right.
And that's it. Like, we're done.
Yeah.
So I don't favor it for what it could have been. I think that had it been broken down, had they littered information over a longer period and like given you a reason to care about this character, do I think maybe it would have changed some of my opinion? Sure. Was it still repetitive? Was it still the same shit, different day kind of mentality where you're running around the same 4 corners looking for these things? Did it kind of feel like Slender Man at the end? Oh my God, yes. If I wanted to play the Pages, the Slender Man game, I would just play that. And that is, by that point, what it felt like, where you were collecting like photographs or trinkets or image portions. And it just lost me.
Do you feel if this was just called The Short Message, had nothing to do with Silent Hill, would it be any better? Would it be worse?
Taking the fact that they slapped Silent Hill's name on it as a whole, I still don't consider this a part of Silent Hill at its core. I feel like this was just something where they were making a game, and in its own concept, could The Short Message have been something kind of cool? Sure, conceptually, this would have been a demo to me, and I still would have hated Anita. But I think it would have been a good introduction to a separate game.
It being free is like, I really think that through everything we've talked about, I really feel that was the decision that was made. Like we are not confident enough in this to sell it. Like I honestly don't know why it was even made, because it's like there's enough that you have on your plates for Silent Hill, and there's enough that's already gone wrong with Ascension. Hopefully Townfall is a thing, but even then, like, you know, that stuff with Annapurna being part of it, now that gaming division seemingly closed down, and we have like 2 other things that are at least locks right now. Obviously the Silent Hill 2 remake and Silent Hill F, and hopefully that's a thing. But like, yeah, it's rough that these are the 2 things that we've been given so far, and they're like, in terms of full-bodied reviews, Short Message is the lowest rated thing. Like Silent Hill Ascension is technically lower rated just because there's only 2 reviews, and one's like 50 and one's I don't even know. But this is like, as overall like aggregate reviews is like 56 or 52 or something like that. Like,
it's like 2.8 on Ascension, no matter what direction you go. Like, it's just, they gave up. I will say this as a Silent Hill fan, as a long-standing Silent Hill fan, as someone who will always, you know, love the series no matter what. I think that a lot of us, especially the old long fans, and I'm sure Mew would probably say the same because him and I have gotten into lengthy discussions about it. I think that we finally have just reached a point where we're all just kind of shrugging and going, whatever happens, happens.
Yeah.
Because like,
we started this call, you said, how are you doing? I was like, you're like, just existence. I'm like, yeah, just existence. And I feel that's like the Silent Hill fan experience right now.
Yeah.
It's like, I can't be hurt more.
No.
So yeah, it's fine.
And
whatever.
I say
if
that
it happens, it happens.
I say that being someone who waited 10 years for Devil May Cry 5 and then turned around and had to watch Hideaki walk away recently. So like,
yeah,
I have a lot of big feelies, but specifically for Silent Hill, obviously there's a lot of variation to this tier list. There's a lot of people who are gonna be like, I can't ever speak to you again, get away from me. And that's okay, I respect you, but as a long-standing Silent Hill fan, I will merely just continue to exist, hope for the best, but always expect jack shit from Konami until they actually manage to pull their head out of their ass for 5 minutes and think about the fans and not the money, which will never happen. So,
well, we'll see with our next game, which is
F.
Yo, look at how slick I did that.
Yep. Well, I like how you were like, with, and then you just kind of paused, and I was like, F? Uh-huh. I'm F, like stylistic. So all we really have out of F so far is the trailer. For me, because I watched I have a live reaction to this too, because I watched the full Silent Hill drop. I am really interested to see what they decide to do with Silent Hill F, because conceptually, it's brand new. You know, we just talked about the arcade shooter being in like 1916 or whatever. Well, Silent Hill F is a brand new story taking place in 60s Japan. So we're getting something really different with this.
Really different, yeah.
Yeah. So it's gonna be something.
The problem with it is that I think it's like a far way off. Like, still, like, you know, that trailer is like all they have.
Oh yeah.
When they showed it. So like I'd be shocked if it came out in 2025. So I'm thinking like, you know, 2026 type thing.
My best guess, based upon how releases are going and like the concept of the way that things have been, to be honest with you, and I told Ellis this when I saw the trailer, I was like, yeah, well, I'll believe it when I play it. And like that's because again, we're reaching back to that meh. And same thing with like Townfall, because obviously the 2 that we've got to look forward to is Silent Hill F, which in my opinion, I don't even know if that's going to be a Silent Hill game. Is it actually going to be a Silent Hill game, or are we faced with another point of like a short message where it doesn't actually have anything to do with Silent Hill? It's just a separate game and they're slapping the Silent Hill theme on it. Like, who knows? So
it's just that the Townfall's developers, like the 2 games I played of theirs, like both really good. So that's all I can go on, but like I'm not confident that's enough in the sense of like, what is Konami gonna make them do? What is the budget? What, you know, like there's too many still unknown factors. And while I want to always err on the side of no, that developer made some really cool games, like nowadays, like that's simply not enough. You have to assume something else is going to go wrong elsewhere especially when it's of this big dumb new resurgence.
Yeah.
Like, there's only so much money they can spend, so
True.
something's going to get the short end of the stick, and I think like it's going to be that, like where it's a bigger budget's going to go to 2 remake and F.
Yeah.
So, and this is probably going to be like a 3-hour little thing that costs like, $20 maybe. I don't know, maybe less than that. Oh, hopefully.
Well,
because we can't even give Ascension away.
no, and here's the salt, right? Because Silent Hill is coming out of Neobard's Entertainment. Specifically, and I had to look this up because I wasn't aware of this, but that studio in particular has actually worked on several Capcom games, which included RE237 Reverse, and then the multiplayer mode in Village, as well as like Marvel Avengers and No Straight Roads. So, I was not aware of that. I actually had to look that up.
Neither was I, actually.
Here's the problem, though. That team realistically only lent a small hand to those games. And I just don't know what we're gonna see coming out of F specifically. Which people, I guess, are saying that the reason that it's called F is it's not actually in reference to the letter F, it's music sheet F.
Yeah, it is written that way. Yeah,
which makes,
forgot.
Yeah, well, and it makes me wonder, like, okay, so what does this truly have to do with, and how is it going to tie into Silent Hill? But who knows? And then, of course, with us not really knowing that, we do have some other things to look forward to. So, who knows?
Who knows? Da-na-na, da-na-na, da-na-na. I was playing the Saw game earlier today, and I was just going, da-na-na, da-na-na, da-na-na. Like, with every reveal in the game, like, no matter how menial it was, just doing the Saw reveal music.
This is completely off topic, but I played the escape room in Vegas. Like, I went to the Saw escape room in Vegas. And I've never been more mad because they pair you. It was just like me and Ellis, and then like they pair you with strangers, obviously, if you don't have a group that's big enough.
Of course.
I have never gotten so mad so fast at a group of strangers in my life. And it was in that moment that I realized I'm not allowed to ever do escape rooms with strangers, especially escape rooms that are intended to put pressure on you and scare you. Because I just wind up doing everything myself because they aren't doing it fast enough. And it was in that moment that I realized, oh yes, the autism is real. So.
Every time I've done an escape room, I've regretted it. like nothing against escape rooms. It's just, I just picked bad ones. I've been paired up with weirdos I didn't know.
Nope.
Or I didn't know very well. And I'm just like, I'm hot, I'm sweaty, I want to get out of here. Let's go eat. No.
So, okay, so we need to do an escape room together, clearly.
Yeah. Because I'm always willing to give, like, and anytime I'm like interested, like, oh, Resident Evil 1, oh, it's like over, it's like a pop-up one, or it changes into something else, so I never get to. I just don't want to do like escape room. I want to at least be like I want a Devil May Cry escape room.
No,
There's,
because
like,
no, I wouldn't act right because they would have to have somebody in as Dante, and I don't know if I could act right. I'm gonna be level with you. There's a reason I'm not going to Disneyland while Deadpool's there. Okay, like. I know me. I'm going to be a good person. I'll be good. Damn it. It would be sick, though.
I love my wife dearly. She prefers reboot Dante.
No.
Yeah, I know. Right. So there's a specific reason for this. She never played the originals, but when she was in game testing, she tested the reboot game. So the opening cutscene where he's naked and flying through the air and the pizza's covering his junk, blah blah blah. She was just like smitten by this. Like, this is what got her going. And then when I showed her, like, we were together, showed her like, well, yeah, here's the other Devil May Cry game. She's like, this guy's like a joke. I mean, like, what do you mean?
Okay, so she saw. Okay, so she saw the attitude and the like bitchiness of DMC Dante, i.e. just Ninja Theory's director, but that's fine. And then completely missed the fact per storyline that OG Dante is actually just really fucking depressed and trying to do his best, so he passes everything off as comedy because otherwise he would literally yeet himself into the other nether if given the choice. Which is also why he can't maintain a relationship with anybody outside of himself, and the other reason that he's so in the hole that he won't even pay to flush his own toilets. Like, let's be honest for 2 seconds. Anyway, I'll die on this hill about Dante, but that's fine.
Yeah, when she told me that, I was like, I still love you.
I still love you. I just don't think that we're making very good decisions, honey. That's all.
So when the anime comes out, I'll make her watch the anime so she can like get a a concentrated burst of like, this is how it is. Do you want to like look at 5? Do you want to look at 4, 3? Whatever. And
Yeah.
we'll go from there because I need to weed this out.
You've got to play. You're gonna have to play him in order with her so that she like has context and can get it together for 2 seconds. Not to mention, I know that if you introduced Virgil, I think she would like maybe backseat a little bit, especially older Virgil, because older Virgil gets hella bitchy, and I know she'd like Nero.
1 and 2 are just hard because it's like it's not the character that the character is now, though.
I mean,
not really.
So I guess that's what's nice though, and like maybe that's my thing is we grew up with these guys.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like we got to see them in ways that I guess the newer crowd getting into it didn't. Because the newer crowd didn't get to experience it as Dante and Virgil at their core, like from the beginning, for where it was like borderline cringy and like whatever, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't know, man. I think she would like them as she saw the progression, but you would have to make her sit down and do it, and that's gonna be hard.
It's so. Did you see though? It's like, why is it Johnny Young Bosch?
I don't know for the anime. Listen, I said the same thing, but then like Ruben, I love Ruben, but Ruben is batshit insane. I love him, but he doesn't know how to stop, and I think that's like they didn't want the heat coming from like, why did you hire Ruben? Have you seen these things that he said? And like I know that's why they did it, but like I love Johnny Young Bosch. Don't get me wrong, amazing voice actor. Like have met him, super amazing, cool dude. But like, you guys, he doesn't sound like Dante. He doesn't.
He sounds like Nero.
Yes, and if I wanted Nero, I would go play the Nero.
I would say like, just hire somebody that's not already an iconic cast member. Just hire somebody new. It's not like it's the most unique, craziest voice in the world.
Well, and they had no problem doing it for the fucking mobile game. So like, why wouldn't you do it for the anime?
Oh, yeah.
Not to mention, you are allowed to have people step up to the plate who are similar in sound and stylistic approach, but are not the same delivery, and make it sound just as good. They just didn't bother. And then I'm sure Johnny Young Bosch was like, I'd love to have been Dante. And then he stepped up. I love him. He's great. I do not think he was a good choice for Dante. Even young Dante, I just don't.
Young Dante, I could see that. I could see that for like an opening episode, like flashback, whatever. I think that kind of is interesting, but yeah, after a certain point, it's like, no, like...
Well, and what's this bullshit? Because it takes place with the manga, right? So like, we have the manga running parallel, which is the introduction of the White Rabbit, because the White Rabbit is in the manga, the first chapter of the manga. So like, then we have the introduction of the White Rabbit. We see a little bit of the spiral of like Dante's Devil Trigger, but you never actually see him execute it. And then on top of all of this, like there's moments where it looks like he's like wearing Five's coat.
Yeah.
And then he's not. And then he is. And I'm like, are we fucking time skipping? What the fuck are we doing?
I bet it's just like, I just have different coats.
I
Put them on, whatever.
This is where these goes. And then I'm like, okay, so are we gonna see Nell Goldstein too? Because like, some of this plays part in post, and like, because then you have the shit with Gilver, and then you have oh my god, I have no faith. And that was in the fucking the book, like the novella adaptation that had Beryl in it, and like nobody knows who the fuck Beryl is unless you're like a hardcore fucking fan.
I don't know who that is.
Okay, so when the novel came out, there was a character that was introduced, which I should remind everybody that Devil May Cry, it was Devil May Cry 2, that novel. But there was a partner that was brought in who was named Beryl. And Beryl was batshit. but like in a good way. And one of the only ones I've ever seen actually manage to land a kiss on Dante, by the way.
Whoa.
Yes, but nobody fucking knows about Beryl. And it drives me nuts.
Never seen this character.
Yeah. So it drives me nuts because Beryl is like, it's just, and the way he reacts to her, because again, it's DMC2 Dante, so he's like, kind of like, But if you're paying attention, I love that they put a reference to Beryl in DMC5, and I'm so upset because I don't think that we'll ever see it through. Because in Visions of V, they also kind of touch on the fact that Dante can't maintain a relationship because they talk about Lucia. And how, like, she approached him and was like, hey, so, like, can we? And he's like, nah, and then just leaves.
Right.
So I'm mad because we're never going to see it now because Hideaki stepped out.
I mean, it's not a death kiss to a franchise. Like, it's not great, but, I mean, you know, depending on the franchise that Capcom has, like, it just needs that one young designer that's like, no, I can do it. Because a lot of the time when I read the interviews, it's like people at Capcom still like Mega Man, for example, but like there's no one that really has the confidence to be like, I'm gonna be the one to like take up that mantle. But there's still people that want to. They just don't think they can. They're not senior enough, so they're not gonna try. They don't want to give like a pitch and then it get like rejected.
Yeah.
But every so often there's someone that does, and like I think Devil May Cry 5 was like successful enough to warrant that someone will, hopefully someone within Capcom and not like another third party, because that's still really, really tall order to do. But it's not great. It's definitely a strike against the franchise coming back. The only thing I can think of is like, it'd be cool if you joined Platinum and then just made, I don't know, a new, like, not Bayonetta 4, for example, but well, maybe actually, since Kamiya is gone, but
Listen, at this point, much like Silent Hill, I'm just holding on to my butthole and hoping for the best. So, you know. It's
really funny because during the 2012 stuff, it'd be like, no, everyone be angry, be upset. Oh, this sucks. Complain, do it. But now it is totally a vibe of whatever.
It is because it has to be. Like we have no faith anymore. So. It is what it is.
Like, I'm basically invincible. Like, nothing you can do will make me any angrier. You can only possibly please me.
There is nothing you can do to me that I have not already done to myself and other former game studios. It's fine. It's fine. It's gonna be fine, guys.
Alrighty, and now we are at our very, very final game, Silent Hill 2. Silent Hill 2, 2024.
Specifically, we have to be very, very clear.
Exactly, because I thought it was called Silent Hill 2 Remake. I thought I remembered that on like a trailer or anything, but I didn't really check back. But yeah, it was always Silent Hill 2 2024 versus like, you know, Resident Evil games and such. So you have now beaten this. I have now beaten this late last night. I just want to... Yeah, exactly. I just want to jump right into, how do you feel just off the bat, like your feelings on it before we place it? Like, what did they do right? What if they did wrong? That type of stuff.
So actually, when I started this, because I sat down, it was the day before official release. I was that asshole that paid the extra money to be like, no, I need to play it like right now.
So did I. We're both assholes.
Perfect. Lovingly, of course.
Of course.
But I prepaid, and I told my chat, I was like, all right, listen, all right, this is gameplay. And they're like, oh, okay. And I was like, no, you don't understand. I will make a bet with you guys. It's not really a bet, it's a thing. If I love this game, because I defended it, and I defended Bloober like 8 or 9 months ago when all that shit came out, and people were dogging these dudes. I defended them because I was like, no, you can't shit on something that you have not yet seen. It's just not how it's going to be. I was like, and I know Bloober will do right. They have fans of the series. I trust it, right? So I got super excited about it. And I told him, I was like, I will get a tattoo of the Great Sword if I love this game. I will. If I wind up I'm into it. And they're like, all right, bet. So I have the tattoo.
Nice. Oh, cool.
So if that tells you the long and the short, I really liked the fact that Bloober stepped up to the plate And this is me being a Silent Hill fan and enjoying the series. Obviously, we've gone through, we discussed the tier list. We put the original OG Silent Hill 2 up at the top as a 10-star.
Yep.
Which, if I should say anything at all, having the original being what it was and still being amazing, this took it to the next level, in my opinion. I think that Bloober allowed, and I'm speaking specifically for the additives, for the storyline, the puzzle, the enemy, of course, bringing Masahiro and everything, and like keeping a lot of those updated original designs and kind of playing with that. So I will say that from the story perspective, I love that they added some things. They really flushed out a lot of the pieces that were, in my opinion, missing from the original. The voice acting was fucking stellar.
It was, wasn't it?
I loved it. My God, they did such a good job. You know, between Mary's letter all the way back and the way that Angela broke my fucking heart. And that was a hard scene. The abstract daddy fight for me was very personal anyway, and a little bit like I wrote a pretty thin line, and I had to take a break after that because it messed me up. And the fact that, you know, you had voice acting that really continued and pushed the grounds of the story that Bloober, you know, furthered in their own way. With, of course, the blessing of a lot of, you know, a handful of the original team players. I loved it. I think that the puzzles, I personally didn't really, I keep hearing that people are fighting with some of the combo puzzles for some reason. I'm not really sure what's going on there. The puzzles were not that difficult for me, but it could be because I came from a lot of that style of horror, psychological puzzle background, so maybe it wasn't as big of a deal. I think that they were good for what they were. I think they did add to the gameplay. I don't think that they detracted, because each of them still implemented a piece of metaphor that was continuing James's story, or the story of one of the characters that you touch on in Silent Hill. I think that the fog, I know some of the complaint was like, well, the fog is annoying. And I'm like, all right, first of all.
Annoying, like people are not used to it, or annoying because it doesn't look like the old fog exactly?
Because so it was the thickness. They were down with the thickness. I guess that the complaints that I was hearing were, some players were like, well, you just can't see anything. And I'm like, have you guys ever been in fog? Hey, do you know what it's like?
I thought you were going to say, have you guys ever been to Silent Hill? It's foggy there.
First of all, let me tell you about Silent Hill, okay? So, no, but I guess they were saying, like, you know, they couldn't see anything. And I'm like, that's kind of the point, guys. Like, you don't really know what's coming at you in the fog. That's what makes it scary. Not to mention, it's not like it maintains that the entire time. Like, you can still see aspects of the town.
Yeah.
So on that end, I loved it. I loved a lot of the fact that the game almost seemed to storytell itself with the enemies too. In my opinion, I don't know how you feel about this, and I can't wait to hear actually kind of your stance, but once you get to the hospital, suddenly everyone knows, like, MMA and jiu-jitsu. So I don't know what that's about, but
you mean the enemies and their grapple moves?
Yes, the mannequins. Oh my God, those assholes, those long leggy bitches are around the corner, and you walk into a room because they don't trigger the radio. So you walk into a room and they're behind like a counter, but it's not just one. There's two, because there's see multiple, the one behind the counter, and you're like, all right, I'm good. And then from the right side with a ladder comes like mannequin number 2, and she just beats your ass, and you're like, wait.
Yeah, it's not a problem because it keeps you on your toes, right? Like it wasn't like, oh, this sucks. It's like, you keep getting me. That's it, right? Like it's and it was never. Yeah, I complimented while we were playing it, me and Liam, and I was just like, I really like how it's just like, it leads to kind of ambushes that you don't expect, and they're not precisely jump scares, but they could be given on the situation. I actually really liked it, and the times where you actually see them well before, like, they haven't triggered, and you see them hiding behind a plant like Shaquille O'Neal is like hiding behind there. Those are always like funny moments. It's like almost like this is kind of like not a joke, but like it's just funny that you're catching them unawares. I really liked how the mannequins were used later on, where they're crawling on the walls, and it's the same enemy.
Spiders.
It's the same enemy. It has slightly different animation patterns, and just seeing it from the third person behind the back perspective, like, just made it feel like a whole new thing. Like, this is radically different, even though it's technically not. But I like the mannequins. Like, I thought they're hilarious.
I think it speaks to the volume, though, of the fact that so much like, and we discussed this, I'm going to hit us with 4 for 2 seconds. My bitch about 4, revisiting that for 2 seconds, was the fact that you had these repetitive enemy motions and like this constant run-in. So you played the game forward, you played the game backward, but nothing really changed, right? There was some cool designs, but it had some repetitiveness, even though the two primary consistent character types for your enemies in this game are the nurses, eventually, once you get to Brookhaven, and then the mannequins. They still managed to, like, even though you're playing against these same enemies, they still managed to update the enemies and make them bitchier, like, the further that you get. The cool thing, though, is the fact that maybe it was me, they seem to almost get a little more difficult once you get past Brookhaven, which realistically, if you think about the psychology behind James and everything that's happened, that's when things got harder for him. And so I agree. Having that almost, whether it was intentional or not, obviously I'm not part of that team, I could never say, I wouldn't know, but it occurred to me that it seemed like you're dealing with these very, like, sexualized enemies that have only gotten more difficult to have to face and challenge yourself against, while James is devolving into realizing what's been happening the entire time. And that specifically happens during the Brookhaven incident, and more so specifically after you wind up in the other world when Mary gets got by Geometry Daddy. So once that happens, it goes from there. Anyway, sorry, tangenting. So loved that. I also hated that they knew jujitsu, because fuck them. Seriously, though, I do think that my negatives, if I had to kind of put myself in that position, specifically with the remake, obviously there were a couple of game-breaking bugs that came up after the fact, which was unfortunate. But let's not pretend that that's not the first time this has happened with any game.
Yeah, for sure.
Obviously, there were game-breaking bugs that occurred with Zoocosis and a few other titles that recently came out under their own separate guise. Life happens. It's unfortunate. It sucks. It's not a deal breaker for me, because that's just gaming. That's coding. I think that if I had to really complain, I'm gonna level, man. I'm struggling. I think that maybe if I were to go from a technical aspect, because from the storyline I've got nothing. I'll be straightforward. I don't really.
Wow, that's really telling on it, because I storyline I had nothing, but the fact that you also had nothing is that says a lot about how they treated the material, and it was very well. So
well, I guess I didn't feel like anything they added was unnecessary. It all just felt like a fucking story, like a true, honest to God, this is the story of a man who truly has stuck himself in his personal purgatory and now has to pay the price. And, all the way to these bastards rooted down it's like into the finest details to add Mary's body in the back of the car at the beginning of the game. Like, my God, those details for me are fucking zingers. Like, that tells me that they truly had OG fans of Silent Hill and in it.
And keeping the Comic Sans sign tucked away
inside the barn.
In a tunnel. Like that was like when I first heard about that, like, well into, not even well, but like early on in playing it. I was like, it's there. That's awesome.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I was gonna say, and then like one other little thing is like towards the end, I'm playing with Liam, and I'm just like, I think we're in the kitchen or something in Lakeview. I was like, man, I'd really like for James to like just find a piece of bread, and then like something he says, he goes, huh, it's bread, and then that's it. And then like 2 hours later, we're like going back when you've lost your weapons, when you put them in the trunk or whatever. And then we're going around, and as we're running away from an enemy, we see like a little prompt. We look at the bread, and then the achievement pops up. It's bread. Does that need to be there? No, it's just a cheeky reference to 3, but I appreciated it so much just because I love its bread so much.
No, absolutely. Well, and they did the same thing with the Halo of the Sun in the wall. And like, I don't know, personally for me, yes, obviously it was fan servicey in its own right, but that tells me that there were truly OG fans on the team that wanted this to be what it needed to be and to come out on top with it. And I really think they did. So the story, I got nothing. Technical, I mean, there were some like really annoying angles and small, and it was very rare. But every so often, like the camera would turn kind of funky, and I'd be like, oh shit, okay, like, and have to adjust. But that is such a like, I'm grasping at straws itch that I really don't have anything that I noticed.
Aside from the progression blocker that me and Liam encountered, we had no other bugs at all, and obviously that's a bad one. But they fixed it in a couple days. But we didn't have anything else. Well, no, we did get soft locked, and there was an ambulance just outside of Brookhaven,
right?
And there was a little gap where you could like go in between a fence and the ambulance, and we went all the way in, and then he tried to get out and he just couldn't. He was like trying to dodge. Liam was just pressing everything, and unfortunately, like the last save we made was like back in the theater. So it was a good 10 minutes of walking back. But again, with AAA games, with a game that's this big, because they extended it, they made so many extra rooms and things. But I'm glad it's like, if we want to increase the playtime, which is valid nowadays, like there's gonna be lots of people complaining about, then they didn't add anything new, or whatever. So going the route of let's just add extra puzzles, let's just add extra rooms, and just real estate within the levels you already know is a much better idea than like, let's make
Let's add new things that don't make sense. Yeah, exactly.
Let's throw the water tower, or like the amusement park.
Yeah.
Or just a whole new area that just maybe, I don't know, is not very compelling. So that's the only 2 bugs that we had, and again, that's great for a AAA game of this size and scope and stuff. I have one before I echo pretty much everything you said about all of its positives. I do have one, like, I think this is a bit of an issue, and I wish it wasn't like this. And then I have one suggestion, but it's like really minor. Did you play on normal, hard, or?
I played on normal. I started my hard run. I haven't gotten very far in it because I just have not had time.
Gotcha.
I was normal, and then no, I did normal across the board, puzzles too. Yeah. So,
we did as well. I think the balance of how many items you're given, specifically health items, I think is the bigger problem than ammo. Ammo was like, we didn't have too much, but health was like, after Brookhaven, like we had 30 health items almost at all times.
Yeah. And
that is a number that I would think is good for easy. If you have combat on easy, I think for normal, that's way too much for a survival horror game. I'm sure hard is balanced a little bit. So Liam had said this when he was playing, but I agree with him. He's like, took a bit of tension out of fights for me, knowing I just had so much health at that time. But that's, depending on how much people scavenge, how much they look around. So that is a bit subjective, but for our experience, I'm like that. I would think like maybe see if you can balance that a little more. I'm not sure in a patch or maybe just in a future game, whatever. So that's like my main actual, that's a bit of an issue.
Yeah.
My only other suggestion, and this might be heresy, so anyone call me out on heresy. I do feel like maybe one or two other enemy types or maybe variants on the existing enemies that exhibit some other type of behavior might have been good. I really don't have that big of an issue, but there were times where I'm like, yeah, I've seen, there's some nurses here. I don't know why they're exactly in this area. And it was just such a minor thing, but it did kept creeping up on me. But I think that might be because since the areas have been extended and made larger, that might just be a natural cause of that. Yeah. Well, we only have these enemies. And I totally get the original team being like, let's not mess with anything and create our own enemies or something. But with Ito on board,
why not?
I think why not? Fans would be like, oh, that's fine if he oversees the monster design. And that was my only thought. Like, maybe, like, I was thinking, like, maybe a dog would be nice. But then again, you know, it's just something a little bit different than just bipedal or quadpedal, I guess, in the names of the mannequins. But, you know, something along those lines. But it wasn't like a needed thing, like, oh, this is an issue. This was just like, I would have liked to have seen that. But that's just me.
No, I don't think it's heresy. I don't disagree. To a certain level, I don't disagree. I think that they did offer us some types of changes. So, like, the Otherworld implementation where you get, like, the inky characters or the explosive style spitters and like that kind of thing.
There was that.
I do think it was helpful for them to have that additional character type because it did give you something different versus like your traditional, like, this is just the same thing over and over. To have another, I'll call them static characters, like just something to insert, right? Standard enemy type. It's possible they could have. I mean, they could have added one more rotation of, like, worse enemies right before, you know, the lakeside or anything else. On the other hand, it's kind of one of those things where I feel like they spent so much time putting it into a position of, okay, but let's consider our players. We have OG players that are going to be looking for us to essentially screw up, right? And that's not a lie. They were ready to dog Bloober, ready for it, before we even had seen anything yet. So, like, they knew. And on the counter end, they also knew that they had the implementation of new players who had not yet experienced Silent Hill. And this is their first venture into this world. So on one hand, the health thing, right? So, like, and this is all in part of what I've got to say, but, like, the health having so much, I don't think that for OG players, that was a situation where it was like, yeah, like, we really kind of got overloaded, guys. But it's because we all, as experienced players going into this world, know what happens if you fuck about and don't look for stuff. So
that's true.
We are trained as, you know, I guess those with older view of this game and knowledge, we're trained to go do that already. And they knew that, which is kind of the counter flip of like, all right, can you really find a balance? Because on the other end of it, you have newer players who aren't as familiar with the concept of going and really like nook and crannying, you know, every single corner of every room for story and safety, right? For ammo or health, who are gonna miss it. And then they go into the next room, and if there's health right there, they're like, oh shit, there's health, so they grab it. But then they miss it the next two times where it's been hidden, where players who go and actively look for these things are going to find it. They also dumped, obviously, ammunition during boss fights and things like that. Like,
which makes sense.
Yeah, which is helpful, and that makes sense. So, for example, I ran out of ammunition during the final fight.
Yeah, we had like 2 or 3 bullets left. Like, that was it, you know?
Like, that, good balance. You fucked me. Good balance. But that was a good one versus like the Eddie fight, for example, where I came in and I was making him chug shotgun and rifle bullets because I hate it.
Yeah.
So like, you know, I dumped every ounce of ammunition I had into him because I don't like Eddie, and I'll leave it at that. I have very not nice things to say that will get you flagged on YouTube. But
overall, what did you think about that particular fight? Because Liam, first time playing through Silent Hill 2, and me, like, this would be like technically, I guess, in addition to the old one, like, I don't know, 3rd, 4th or something. Yeah. Like, he was amazed by it. He's like, oh my God, this is such a cool fight.
Okay.
Like just visually and like the way it just worked mechanically with the meat like going backwards and forwards. He was like amazed by this boss fight.
I'm gonna give you the third-party professional Autumn answer for the technical side of things. I liked it a lot. I liked the fact that you're in this meat locker. You are focusing on, you know, really, because Eddie's human, right? Period. End of story. Eddie is a human being, and you have put yourself through terrors untold as you're venturing through Silent Hill, and then here comes Eddie, the guy that you looked at up to this point, going, something's weird, but I don't know what it is, and then here he comes out of left field with this monologue, and then suddenly it's cold. There's like breath. There's the misties from like the chill of the freezer. There's the meat just swinging back and forth as you're trying to navigate and figure out, is that meat? Is it Eddie? And like he's shooting between these beef racks while you're trying to go around the outside of the room. If at any point you left that center point and did not use the meat for cover, for example, you risked it, especially when he started hitting harder later because he got faster.
Yeah.
So I thought it was a really, really good fight. I thought that their ability for the AI to work around that environment while you also have to navigate against this human being whom you're not trained to look for. You're not trained to look for a person up to this point. You have been trained to look for a monstrosity, right? So it also, from a psychological point, kind of puts you in that headspace of like, is that, that's meat. Because you're thinking like, well, he's going to transform, especially if you're a new player. You don't know. You're just expecting it to go south, tits up, right?
Or left, like if you come from Resident Evil, this is when he turns into like a big like mod. He's going to inject himself with Silent Hill juice. Yeah.
Right, but that's exactly it, is you're coming from two perspectives. But I agree. I loved the fight. I thought it was fantastic. Again, voice acting swinging. Now, taking my professional hat off, I have never wanted to resurrect somebody just to kill them a second time in my life. And after that fight, I was so angry. My chat was like, bro, you should chill. Are you good? I'm like, no, let me kill him again. So, being able to elicit that kind of a response working through a boss level from a technical perspective while also affecting you psychologically from multiple points was brilliant. I loved it.
So about the voice acting, there's one point I wanted to get out there, and I knew that there was this change before we got to it. Just happened across my timeline, and it was after you kill Eddie. And then we don't have, I've killed a human being. Yeah. And the fact that they decided to not even rewrite that line or like just try to make it sound, a bit more palatable to the 2024 ear. The fact that it just zooms in on James and he looks at his hands and you totally get that line from what he's looking at. And I just thought, I was like, that's a super nice change. Like, they didn't necessarily have to do it, but I do think like I like that a bit more. And just in case the achievement pops up of human being or I killed a human being or I forget what it said.
A person,
Yeah.
No, I completely agree. Personally,
so it's like the lack of voice acting was good in that sense.
But that's another. Oh my God, the sound design. I'm not gonna be that guy. I'm not gonna go on forever. Let me tell you some cheese. Let me put some cheese on your pizza. Okay.
Please.
I'm gonna put some cheese on it. So, I don't know who could eat at a time like this when there's monsters around, but
right.
All right. The sound design. Where you could be doing something completely innocuous and you hear that bubbling voice in your headphones, especially because it's surround. You get that behind your ear and it's you lose it. So not only did they have like gibberish, like it wasn't anything, but it was the sound of somebody talking and you were never quite sure what they were saying, which was the point. But you had the whispers, you had like the steps that you thought might be yours, but they were so well integrated into the environment that you couldn't tell if it was the environment or an enemy. And then like their ability to work with what was happening in the scene and kind of play with your personal concerns, I felt like really, really lended to amplifying what was happening in the world, and for you to be affected by that as well. So it really pumped up kind of the psychological play that comes with Silent Hill. My God, like, it was fun. I loved it. I loved the sound design. I could not say enough good things about it.
Yeah, like it was. I think. What did you think of the soundtrack? Like, I saw some people saying kind of like, man, I wish they had at least had the original soundtrack that was either like patched in or like I'll even pay like $2 for it. Like the Resident Evil remakes, I think had the old sound design or music that could get put in there. Did you miss it, or were you happy with these new compositions?
If I were a different person and I were my older self from, playing maybe the original, and I was that person again, I could get a little catty and be like, well, but I'm not that person anymore. This is not that game anymore. This is not the same team anymore. This is inherently a rebirth of this series that we have sat for over 10 years on, waiting for anything. A crumb, please, sir. And here we are. So I don't think so. I'm not that person who really just needs it dead to rights, because that's, for me, that's the equivalent of being like, well, if they had the option to select the original voice acting to go with it, I mean, and I'm just not. I want to enjoy what they did, not what they could have, and it's not like Akira wasn't on board, right?
Yeah.
So it's not like we didn't have that OG style. I just think that it's a preference musically. It's the same people who are like, well, I haven't stopped listening to Aerosmith since the 80s. And that's just my vibe. I don't know.
I still haven't stopped listening to Limp Bizkit, so that is kind of me. So
fair enough. Me too, though. Like, that's a different stuff.
I was totally happy with what I heard. It did feel a bit more subtle, but that makes sense for the new game that they're making here. So, if they were to add the retro soundtrack in some way, in like a patch or DLC or whatever, I'm not going to be against that. But yeah, I wouldn't really hold it against the game in general, obviously.
No.
I pretty much in agreement with everything here. So this kind of turned into a mini review, but it's
sorry.
That's what I wanted to hear, and I asked, but I'm glad, because when you yourself or a friend that is really anticipating something and whatever, everyone wants to be pleased. So I'm really glad to hear you enjoyed it that much. With that said, though, where do you feel this ranks? Gut reaction. Go now.
It doesn't belong on the scale.
What do you mean?
It doesn't belong on the scale. You asked me. You said gut reaction. I told you my gut reaction. It doesn't belong on the scale, and here's why. This was such a departure and such a trust project beyond any remake I've seen so far, in my opinion. And now there's gonna be some OG Resident Evil people coming for me, but I am in this position to say that this was a trust project. And not only did a kind of an underdog studio, realistically, because they were getting dragged. Not only did this underdog studio come out and go, let me remind you who we are, and we're gonna do this for the better. It was a promise. It was a promise to their players. It was a promise to the original fans of the series itself. And it also, although did not make me hate Konami any less, put me in a position to look back and reflect on the old games, to the point where my partner, Ellis, who has not played any of the Silent Hill games up to watching me play this brand new remake, went and sat down without me, and watched through a bunch of the old cutscenes and the old story arcs for all of the other games.
Right.
And to have something affect someone where they wanted to know, they instantly, even if it was older or kind of drug out a little bit, they wanted to know more. And to take a new person for the series and an old person for the series and to make both of them affected tells me that they stepped into a world versus all these other games where they really did take it and spin it so hard that it stood on its own as something really special.
Okay. in the boundaries of a tier list, though.
Oh yeah, sorry.
As a video thing, but no, I'm glad you said that because it does mark it as something different and special. Because really, when you say, "Oh, I'm remaking Resident Evil 4," it's like you can see that being done in your head.
Yeah.
You're like, "Oh, they can just go make it campier. They can go make it scarier." Those are the two things, right? But this is just that there's been like no, aside from Shattered Memories, which is like barely counts. There's been no Silent Hill remake before, and then it has this like 25 years-ish of like history and fans and whatever. There's so much more things that could go wrong, especially when the source material is more subtle than a Resident Evil game and much different. So it really marks it as kind of a wondrous project that maybe not to say shouldn't succeeded, but had a high likelihood of not, and the fact that they did, and the fact that they said to Konami, like, maybe we should stick closer to the game, because they were, I'm sure you've seen, but I'm sure some of listeners have heard that, like, originally Konami producers were like, yeah, let's do whatever, whatever ideas you got, and they're like, well, maybe our idea is sticking close to it, and they're like, okay. So that is an incredible restraint to do that. So if you were to actually rank this among these, where do you feel it would place?
It would be a 10. Easy.
It would be a 10.
It would be an easy 10 from me.
And that's, again, taking out the littered little bugs that popped up, which were fixed and handled. I don't have complaints about this game. I really don't. And it's not coming from a place of bias, a little bit, but it's coming from a place of, like, I legitimately sat down and I enjoyed this game. Taking out Silent Hill, taking out Bluebird, taking out all the arguments, all the BS, I genuinely loved the game. It elicited emotions that were very strong, and yet didn't babysit me through those emotions. It put me in a position where I had to sit and deal with those feelings. And I think sometimes, whether we want or like it or not, that's really important in creative storytelling, and I think that they did that.
I feel if Silent Hill had never existed before and this was just Silent Hill, like, let's just take the two out of it and this is just its own story nowadays, brand new fresh game, this would be an incredible game and still get high marks, right? But it's not, so it plays into both things. If someone's ever heard of Silent Hill, never, and just play this, I'd imagine they would enjoy it. If you're a Silent Hill fan, I'd imagine you enjoy it. If you're a Silent Hill fan, I could also imagine you still kind of hating this, like anybody out there, because everyone has their opinion on certain things, certain changes, etc. So, for me, I would fight you. I would lose, of course, because you're quite muscular. But I would fight you if you had been, for some reason, let's just say you said 6-star. I'd be like, no, absolutely not. Like, I would have vetoed that to at least be 8. But I tend to agree. I don't think I could say 8 just because of the little issues I've kind of said, but when I really think about it, again, having almost an impossible job and having everyone doubt the development team and coming out the other end with a great product, like a really good product that honors the original game, does a few little different things that I think like 99% of it were all correct choices. I agree that it's a 10 for me as well. So I can't believe it.
We did it.
Because when it was first announced, I had my doubts, just because of Konami and just how they've handled Silent Hill in the past. Like, I had a lot of doubts, and it took about until late August, I think it was, where they started showing extended gameplay, like 10-20 minutes, where I looked at that and I was like, whoa, okay, this looks really good. Okay. Because when you're boiling everything down to a trailer, you have to see the game running for a while to really get, like, a trailer almost always, unless you're an action-packed thing, and it doesn't really matter because you can just pack that all in. But when it's something like this, a trailer almost can never really do like it justice almost. So when they showed those long extended gameplay segments, I was like, holy shit, I think they're doing it. I think they're doing it. And that only grew from there and there until I was like, I think this will be really great. And then when the actual reviews hit, I was like, holy shit, yeah. That good feeling paid off, because I hate when your good feelings betray you, and then like, you know, something is just not what you thought it was going to be, and you're disappointed. But I was not disappointed in any aspect of this, and I'm excited for the future of Silent Hill, which is not something you can say normally.
No, you cannot.
So,
and I really, man, I just don't want this to be, I will say this, because I'm realistic. I'm a realist, and I can only simply say that I hope that we continue to see an upward trend in the storytelling for Silent Hill and what Silent Hill is. I would love to see Origins touched on and flushed out properly, like it deserved to be, and more of the fan theory of, you know, Travis being kind of one of the OG versions of like a protector style pyramid head for Alessa. But that's selfish. I'm completely selfish. For no reason do I want, you know, Geometry Daddy in the mix. But I do think that we hopefully will continue to see this. And even if it necessarily isn't Silent Hill itself, I think that it was, you know, much in the way that Baldur's Gate had its own thing for that style of game. I think that Silent Hill 2's remake is kind of a way for other devs who do indie horror on higher tiers to maybe step back and go, all right, like we can shoot for the moon. People can appreciate storylines and the things that we do. You know, there is a reason for this psychological storytelling and for those gut punches, and to remind people that we are at our core human in the best and worst of ways.
Very well said. I you know, like I said, I had doubts when it was first announced back in the Silent Hill transmission event, where it showed all those things, and when all those things get thrown in there, like, hey, we have this coming out, it's like that's not that's like when they announced the Jason universe is happening. He's going to be starring in this and that and that. Like, I don't. So
Jason
I'm really
goes to
glad.
Vegas.
Exactly. Well, I kind of like that, but yeah. The fact that the first main big game, you know, not free game, not a mobile game, like that's a great sign. Yeah. The only thing I'd wish in the immediate future, like on this, let me know if you agree, is Born from a Wish DLC. Just maybe that would be really, really cool. She makes mention of it when she gets to that house, and I'm just like, oh, that seems like it's really a little hint. But then again, the game has a couple of hints like that. But that's what I'd like to see for now, for Silent Hill 2 specifically, and the future. I'm not really sure what, but like that just seems like an easy win there. Like, you know, people would appreciate that. Do you agree, or you think they should leave it kind of one and done for Silent Hill 2? I mean,
I think that if they implemented it properly and it was done in the same wave, like crashing wave up and down, as they managed to pull out this game, I don't think I would complain. I really don't.
Okay.
And mainly it's because I am one of those people who's just hungry for anything, you know, related to this universe, because I do hold it very personal to me. It is very near and dear to my heart. You know, it picked me up in a place when I was not capable of getting up on my own, because it reminded me that sometimes shit's just really horrible. But it's about how you approach it at the end of the day. And I think, you know, kind of allowing for any content to come my direction, I'm gonna try my best to at least look into it and try it before I immediately spit in its direction, while also understanding that sometimes things don't work out. So I wouldn't complain. I wouldn't hold it in high regard until I could touch it, but I'm down. I mean, I'm down for anything, you know what I mean?
Super good to hear. So I guess that is it, unless a secret Silent Hill game releases tomorrow. Sometimes they do these videos and like something just stealth drops out of nowhere. But yeah, Silent Hill 2, the remake, and 3 at the very top, and of course Silent Hill Pachinko down down at zeros. I wish I could give it minus. But now I'm almost scared. Konami's like, hey, we have all this goodwill. Maybe we can get people back in the pachinko parlors again.
I will throw the pachinko machine nearest to me into the fire. Period. I will buy it just to do that.
Autumn Ivy, where can people find you on the internets?
Hey, okay, great. So you can actually find all of my socials listed under officialautumnivy.com. That is everything from all of the standard socials to the exclusive socials and everything in between if you just want to catch up on what I'm doing, which includes my IMDb. And I also have merch and other fun stuff and more professional if you like to hear my demo reels or anything like that under autumnivy.com.
Cool. Thanks so much for taking the time to do this. This is like the final video of my October festivities, and I could not go out with a better one than this. So thank you so much.
No, thank you. It's always a pleasure hanging out and chatting, and anytime you need me, I'll really be a call away.
Okay, good. And if we do another tier list, I'm sure I promise I'll take you there again one day.
We agreed I'm not allowed to do the monsters, and my fans know why, and I'll leave it at that. You're amazing. Thank you.
All right, thanks so much. I hope you all enjoyed Flophouse Slays for October. See you again next year.